Chapter 854. Zhou Xian entered the vast starry sky. He rode on his sword, and the sword light streaked across the starry sky like a shooting star. Zhou Xian closed his eyes and sank into deep thought. The removal of the fifth dimension restriction meant that he would now have to face the fifth dimension. Although his strength had greatly increased, he was now facing a peak expert of the fifth dimension. At this moment he thought of Qin Tian's strength. The other party was only a clone, yet it could crush him, Xiaoqi and the others. What if the main body was here? As he thought of this, Zhou Xian slowly clenched his fists. As long as there was life, there would be no battle. Fight. Zhou Xian opened his eyes and looked at the distant starry sky. He knew that if he wanted peace he could only fight. This was his only choice. During his time in Qingqing he had understood one thing. When facing an enemy, don't think about begging them for pity. This was because the more you did this, the more they would look down on you and bully you. There was only one way to make the other party not dare to bully you. Fight. If your fist was hard enough, the other party would not dare to bully you. At this moment he thought of his fate. Was everything that had happened to him since he arrived in Qingqing his fate? Did he believe in fate? Zhou Xian slowly closed his eyes. Fate. Ordinary people said that one's fate was in their own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. He also said that his fate was in his own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. However, it was often in the hands of fate. For example, if Yi Ling had left. At that time, what could he have done? He could not have done anything. For example, when facing Qin Tian and the space-devouring beast, if not for the 3 rays of sword qi from the plainly dressed woman, what could he have done? What could he have done? Zhou Xian faced his heart. The answer was that he could not do anything and could only wait for death. My fate is in my own hands and not in the hands of the heavens. Zhou Xian shook his head and smiled. Now that he thought about it, this sentence was so ironic. How many people in this world could truly control their own fate? Could he do it now? The answer was no. Zhou Xian suddenly smiled. Control of one's own fate? To him it was still a joke. Of course, he understood very well that even though he couldn't control his own destiny now, he had to work hard to fight for it and not resign himself to fate. No matter how unfair one's fate was, one must never resign to it. He could not resign himself to fate. When he thought up to here, Zhou Xian suddenly stopped. In the next moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body, and the surrounding space instantly rippled like water. The aura around Zhou Xian grew stronger and stronger. About an hour later, Zhou Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Boom! The space within a radius of several thousand zhang suddenly trembled violently. Zhou Xian looked at his right hand. He slowly clenched it and a powerful force gathered in his hand. Life destruction. He didn't expect that he would reach the fate-breaking state in this place. Life destruction. Zhou Xian looked up into the depths of space. What was Fate Breaker? Only now did he understand that the so-called Fate Breaker wasn't about breaking through fate, but about seeing through fate. Perhaps one's birth was not good, but that birth did not mean one's entire life. If one worked hard, one could still change one's fate. When he thought of this, Zhou Xian shook his head and smiled. Interesting realms. He didn't know who had created these realms, but he had to admit that they were all very interesting. Now he was a little curious about the legendary Dao Destruction realm. Dao Destruction? How was it destroyed? Now, this chapter is not over. Please continue. He became even more curious. A moment later, Zhou Xian disappeared. About 2 hours later, Zhou Xian arrived in a starry sky. The Nether Palace. Zhou Xian arrived before the Nether Palace and looked at the statues inside. Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Is anyone there?" No one responded. Zhou Xian asked again, "Is anyone there?" Still no response. Zhou Xian hesitated for a moment before activating his bloodline. His bloodline started to boil, but there was still no response. Zhou Xian hurriedly suppressed the blood in his body. He didn't dare to release his bloodline because he couldn't control it. Zhou Xian glanced at the statues, bowed slightly and left. In front of the palace, Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment before saying softly, "I can only rely on myself." With that, he turned into a sword light and disappeared into the vast horizon. As soon as Zhou Xian left, a statue in the palace suddenly shattered. Hee hee, a voice rang out from within the palace. After leaving the Nether Palace, Zhou Xian didn't return to the dual realm sky. Instead he returned to the prison pagoda. Zhou Xian arrived at the top of the pagoda. Sword Venerate was still sitting below the sword. Xian glanced at Sword Venerate. Sword Venerate had been sitting before the sword for a very long time. He had already entered a meditative state. Sword Venerate must have comprehended something. As for how much he could comprehend, it would depend on his luck. Xian looked at the three swords. The pinnacle of swordsmanship? If there was a pinnacle of swordsmanship, then these three swords represented the pinnacle of swordsmanship. How far was his swordsmanship from that of the masters of these three swords? There was no answer. Xian shook his head and left. He went to Xiao Ling'er's alchemy room. Xiao Ling'er was still fiddling with elixirs. Because of Xiao Ling'er, many people in the northern region had reached the Earth's celestial stage. It could be said that Xiao Ling'er had improved the overall strength of the northern region. Seeing Xian, Xiao Ling'er ran up to him. Her little face was still stained with a lot of black dust. Xian gently wiped the dust off Xiao Ling'er's face and said with a smile, "Don't tire yourself too much, okay?" Xiao Ling'er blinked. "Elixirs. Help you." Xian felt warm in his heart. "I know, but in my heart you are more important than elixirs, okay?" Xiao Ling'er hesitated and said softly, "I." As she spoke, she lowered her head. Xian said with a smile, "What's wrong?" Xiao Ling'er looked up at Xian. "I can help you." Xian smiled. "I know. You have helped me a lot." Xiao Ling'er wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Xian touched Xiao Ling'er's little head gently. "What do you want to say?" Xiao Ling'er shook her head. "Nothing." Xian nodded. "Anyway, if there is anything you must tell me, okay?" Xiao Ling'er nodded. "Okay." Xian smiled and then left the alchemy room. After Xian left, Xiao Ling'er took out the alchemy scripture and flipped to the last page. There were two big words on it. Godly Shimi Pill. After a while, Xiao Ling'er turned and walked towards the alchemy furnace. She clenched her fists and her eyes were full of determination. "I must refine it. If I don't succeed, I will die." After Xian left the alchemy room, he came to the entrance of the 9th floor. The door of the 9th floor was different from the other floors. There was a blood-red talisman on the door. Xian glanced at the talisman, then turned and left. He said nothing. "This chapter is not finished, please continue." Because he knew that his strength was not equal to the other party, there was no point in saying anything. He had to take responsibility for this matter himself. After leaving the World Prison Pagoda, Xian arrived at the Dual Realm Sky. As soon as he arrived, the space in front of him suddenly split open, followed by a thick book flying out. Xian was stunned. The executing heaven sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He was about to attack, but at this time, the thick black book suddenly circled around him, then slowly floated in front of him. Xian was about to speak, but the thick book directly turned into a black light and disappeared between his eyebrows. Xian was stunned. What the hell is this? At this time, Lian Qian suddenly appeared in front of him, staring fixedly at Xian. "This is impossible." Xian was puzzled. "Miss Lian Qian, what do you mean?" Lian Qian said, "See if you can control that ancient book just now." Xian hesitated, then nodded. He sank his consciousness into his body and soon, a black ancient book suddenly appeared in front of him. Seeing this thick ancient book, Lian Qian's expression became even more solemn. Xian was puzzled. "Miss Lian Qian, this is?" Lian Qian looked at Xian. "Book realm." Xian frowned slightly. "Book realm?" Lian Qian nodded. "Using books as a boundary. Back then, Master used a book to develop a world. This book is a world of its own. There are many forbidden ancient books, rune incantations and some extremely powerful word spirits. Especially these word spirits, they are condensed from all kinds of forbidden techniques and are extremely powerful." Saying this, she looked at Xian. "Among all the treasures of the Myriad Dimensions Academy, this book can be ranked in the top 3. I don't know why it appeared here and why it directly recognized you as its master." Xian was also a little confused. Why would this thing suddenly appear here? "Impossible." Lian Qian looked at the book realm in front of her. "This guy is arrogant. It can be said that it only obeys master. Why would it come here and even recognize you as its master?" Just as Xian was about to speak, Lian Qian suddenly grabbed the book realm. A moment later she was stunned. "It's her." "Her?" Xian was puzzled. "Miss Lian Qian." Lian Qian looked at Xian. "It's nothing. Since this thing has already recognized you as its master, then make good use of it." This thing is extremely powerful, not any weaker than your executing heaven sword. If used well, it will have a miraculous effect, especially in suppressing one's realm. This thing can suppress one's realm, so when you fight in the future, you can keep your opponent in this book realm and suppress their realm. Suppress one's realm. Yi Xian's expression changed. Miss Xianxia, can this really be done? Xianxia nodded. It can. Not only that, if you can control the world spirits in this book realm with their power, you can completely destroy experts of the same level as Qiantian's clone. Yi Xian asked, what about the main body? Xianxia rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. If the main body was so easy to kill, then Qiantian wouldn't have become the Myriad Dimensions Academy's lord. Yi Xian smiled. That's true. Xianxia said solemnly, however, this thing is extremely powerful. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the ability to subdue those word spirits. Yi Xian asked, how do I subdue them? Xianxia said, come with me. After saying that, she directly brought Yi Xian into the book realm. As soon as they entered the book realm, Yi Xian looked around curiously. There were too many books around. Xianxia said, feel those word spirits. Remember, be polite. These word spirits have their own intelligence, so they are very difficult to subdue. You have to be humble, don't lose face, otherwise. At this moment, a crimson extinguished character suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. It directly flew to Yi Xian's hand, then lightly rubbed against Yi Xian's hand, extremely docile. Xianxia was silent. End of this chapter. Chapter 855. Yi Xian was a little confused. He could feel that the word was trying to please him. Here came the question. Why did the book realm appear here? Not only did it appear here, but it also recognized him as its master. He did not think that he was the master of destiny who would allow such a divine object to submit to him. What was going on? Yi Xian looked at Xianxia. Miss Xianxia, you should know what happened, right? Xianxia nodded. It's her. Her. Yi Xian was slightly startled. You mean the plain-dressed woman? Xianxia nodded. She looked up at the starry sky. If I'm not wrong, Qiantian went to look for her. That big idiot. Yi Xian felt relieved. Clearly, as Xianxia said, the Myriad Dimensional Academy went to look for the plain-dressed woman. And the result was obvious. The plain-dressed woman had definitely won. Not only did she win, but she also snatched a treasure for him. Yi Xian's heart warmed. He looked at the end of the starry sky. She had not forgotten about him. Xianxia suddenly said, it has recognized you as its master. Moreover, the word spirits have also recognized you as their master. You can use them to fight at any time. Yi Xian looked at the annihilate word in his hand. How powerful is it? Xianxia said, you'll know once you try it. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. All right. After saying that, he opened his palm. The annihilate word directly merged into his palm. The next moment he fiercely pushed his palm forward. Boom. In an instant, the space tens of thousands of zhang in front of him turned into nothingness. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of that. What kind of power was this? Yi Xian was shocked. Even his immeasurable sword wasn't this terrifying. This word actually had such great power. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly said, you can try merging this word into your sword. Merging it into the sword. Hearing Xianxia's words, Yi Xian suddenly became a little excited. The power of this word was so strong. If it was integrated into his sword, wouldn't it be even stronger? Thinking of this, Yi Xian hurriedly activated the destroy word. This word was very cooperative and directly integrated into the executing heaven sword in his hand. Boom. The executing heaven sword trembled violently, and a powerful aura of destruction swept out from the tip of the sword. At the same time, Yi Xian's hand cracked. Yi Xian was shocked and he quickly let go of the executing heaven sword. The executing heaven sword trembled violently, and a powerful force surged out from it. The space around Yi Xian and Xianxia began to crack bit by bit. Yi Xian looked at his hand with a solemn expression. His own physical body could be said to be extremely terrifying, but he hadn't expected that his hand wouldn't be able to withstand the power of this word. Moreover, he hadn't even activated the executing heaven sword. If he did, then his entire arm would probably explode. Fortunately, it was a celestial sword. Any other sword wouldn't be able to withstand the power of this word. At this moment, Xianxia spoke solemnly, this sword of yours is really amazing. Any other sword would probably have been reduced to ashes. Yi Xian nodded, indeed. Xianxia said, "Put it away. This word in the book realm can be considered your trump card. Save it for the critical moment." Xian nodded slightly. He put away the executing heaven sword in the book realm. Now he had another trump card. Xianxia looked at Xian. "What do you plan to do now?" Xian looked up at the starry sky in the distance. "I'll go explore it." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light and vanished into the starry sky. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above. Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is really unfair." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly smiled and said, "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang will inherit the position of crown prince. What are you shouting for?" As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Your subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "Your subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yiling suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Boo! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked up to Yiling. Seeing Yiling in such a state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yiling and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yiling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yiling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair." "Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "She should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master, Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yiling sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yiling nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yiling nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yiling. When he saw the murderous intent in Yiling's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yiling's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked up to Yi Ling. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 856. In the dark, Yi Xian looked in front of him. There stood a man. The man wore a feathered robe that seemed to be weaved from feathers. He wore a white square scarf on his head and held a feather fan in his hand. He had a meaningful smile on his face as if everything was under his control. At this moment, a woman slowly walked to the man's back. She wore a dark green dress and her hair reached her waist. Her jade-like arm was wrapped with a golden ribbon, and the end of the ribbon fell to the ground, fluttering gently in the wind. The woman lowered her head and looked down. From her position she could see the dual realm sky. They failed. The strategist smiled. They underestimated the enemy. This four-dimensional universe isn't as weak as we thought. Or rather, the people at the top aren't weak at all. The woman tilted her head and looked at the strategist. Many people are looking at our Myriad Dimensions Academy as a joke. The strategist said softly, "The one who laughs last is the king, isn't that right?" The woman said in a low voice, "Why did the academy head issue a wanted order and let everyone know about it?" The strategist looked down and said softly, "Because the people below might really be very strong." The woman looked at the strategist. "The academy head wants to kill with a borrowed knife?" The strategist smiled and said, "It would be best if you could kill someone else with a knife. However, I'm guessing that the mansion master doesn't want to kill someone with a knife. Instead, he wants to use someone else to exhaust Yi Xian and the people behind him." The woman frowned. "Are the people below really that strong?" The strategist looked at the woman and smiled. "Lin Lang, do you remember the motto that the prophet left behind in Myriad Dimensions Academy?" Lin Lang said, "Don't underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate anyone." The strategist nodded. Many people die because they underestimate their enemies. A lion needs to use its full strength to catch a rabbit. Lin Lang looked at the strategist. "I heard that you sent people to find his sister?" The strategist smiled. "Do you think I'm despicable?" Lin Lang was silent. The strategist smiled. "We can't just use brute force and violence to deal with our enemies. We need to find his weakness. Once we find it, we can use our strongest power to attack their weakest point. What's Yi Xian's weakness? It was his sister. Find Yi Ling's weak point and defeat him in one strike." At this point he looked down and said, "There is no such thing as being despicable when dealing with an enemy. There is only winning and losing." Lin Lang said, "I want to see the so-called geniuses of the four-dimensional universe." After saying that, she directly flew down. The strategist chuckled and left. In the dark, Yi Xian did not make a move. Book for Yi Ling? If it was in the past, he would have killed this strategist at all costs. But now he wouldn't, because only he knew how terrifying Yi Ling was. That was an existence that could suppress his bloodline at any time. Of course, no matter how strong she was still his little sister. This was something that no one could change. Yi Xian turned around and left. Very soon he arrived in front of a huge altar. 4 black-robed experts stood on top of the altar. In front of the 4 of them was a blood-red ball. At this moment, the ball was constantly emitting a red aura that slowly spread towards the seal Lian Qian had placed on it. Corrosion. The red aura was corroding Lian Qian's seal. Yi Xian glanced at the 4 of them. In the next moment he disappeared. The instant Yi Xian disappeared, The expressions of the four people on the altar changed. They immediately stopped. At this time a sword light flashed above the altar. Chi. Four bloody heads flew into the air. Xian extended his left hand to the left and then clenched it. With this clench he grasped the executing heaven sword which was covered in blood. Xian looked at the blood ball in front of him. With a wave of his right hand he disappeared along with the blood ball. Just as Xian disappeared, an old man suddenly appeared on the scene. On the left side of the old man's chest, there was a small, Wei character. An expert from the Myriad Dimensions Academy. The old man glanced at the four corpses on the ground. He looked at the right side of the altar. There was a crystal ball there. With a light hook of his hand, the crystal ball turned into a water screen in front of him. An image appeared on the water screen. In the image a swordsman flashed past and four heads fell to the ground. This swordsman was Xian. The old man pondered for a moment and said, "Inform the others that he's here." "Yes." A voice sounded behind him. The old man glanced around. "You're quite daring." After saying that he disappeared. In a dark corner, Xian sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. A blood-red ball floated in front of him. At this moment, Lian Qian's voice sounded in his mind. "This thing is called the boundary-breaking pearl. Contains a lot of blood qi and evil qi. The evil qi is very strong. You can absorb it to strengthen your bloodline. No, you can't absorb it." She suddenly remembered that Xian's bloodline was already terrifying enough. If he absorbed this thing, would Xian be able to suppress it? He definitely wouldn't be able to suppress it. Xian didn't dare to absorb it. Although this thing was good, he couldn't control his bloodline. Lian Qian said, "Use it at a critical moment." Xian smiled bitterly. "I don't want to be at a critical moment." As he said that, he put away the boundary-breaking pearl. Lian Qian said softly, "You have to think of a way. Otherwise the seal will break in 2 months. At that time the four-dimensional universe will be in danger. You have to understand that humans are greedy." What is the four-dimensional universe in the eyes of the five-dimensional experts? It's a piece of fat meat. The big fish eats the small fish. This is the rule of every world. Right now the four-dimensional universe is the small fish. Xian was silent. Lian Qian continued, "Many people won't come to snatch your pagoda because they know their limits. They know that this pagoda is something that only the big shots can fight for. Therefore their target will be the four-dimensional universe. Simply put, it's to plunder, to slave." Xian said softly, "I originally thought that the five-dimensional universe would be different from the four-dimensional universe." Lian Qian said, "It's the same in every world. Some powerful civilizations are powerful not only because they have great strength, but also because they are crueler than other civilizations and races. Everywhere it's survival of the fittest. The weak will be eliminated." Xian nodded. "I understand." As he said that, he looked around. "Is this the five-dimensional universe?" Lian Qian said, "No, this can be said to be the boundary between the four-dimensional universe and the five-dimensional universe. You have to cross this boundary to reach the five-dimensional universe." "Why do you want to go to the five-dimensional universe?" Xian shook his head. "I don't want to go. I just want to understand it." Lian Qian said, "You want to understand Yi Ling?" Xian nodded. Lian Qian said in a low voice, "She's in the Azura Hell. That place is not something you can go to now." Xian said, "Even with my current strength I can't?" Lian Qian said, "You're not weak, but you're not strong enough to walk around the five-dimensional universe. Don't look down on this world even a little bit. There are many people who can kill you." Xian nodded. "I understand." Lian Qian asked, "What are your plans now?" Xian said softly, "To kill." After saying that, he turned his head and looked into the distance. "Someone's coming." In the distance 2 men and a woman flew over. Soon the 3 of them stopped not far in front of Xian. The man in the lead was holding a long sword. He looked down and said softly, "It's said that Xian is a genius in swordsmanship. His attainments in swordsmanship are extremely profound. I don't know if it's true or not." Next to the long sword man, another man in a luxurious robe smiled. "How strong can a swordsman from a low-level dimensional world be?" The long-sword man shook his head. "Ada, don't underestimate anyone." The man called Ada smiled and said, "Eternal Wind, I'm not looking down on them. I know that the people of the four-dimensional universe are still pursuing the so-called Dao, And they don't even know what Dao is. As he said that, he looked down at the four-dimensional universe. Their current civilization is too far behind us. Not to mention anything else, just the three of us are enough to sweep the entire four-dimensional universe. Eternal Wind chuckled. Ada, you're still the same. Think about it, if the people down there are so easy to bully, would the myriad dimensional academy's lords still issue this so-called arrest warrant? The person who kills Zhou Xian can not only share the world prison pagoda with the myriad dimensional academy, but also enter the myriad dimensional academy's holy land to cultivate. Apart from that, they can also obtain a scroll of martial arts created by the prophet. If the people down there are so easy to bully, they wouldn't have offered such an attractive condition. As he said that, he turned his head. This myriad dimensional academy is trying to kill us with a borrowed knife. But that's fine too. Now that the restriction has been lifted, the four-dimensional universe is also a piece of fat meat for us. The woman beside him suddenly said, "Fat meat." The corner of Eternal Wind's mouth rose. Think about it. With the strength of the three of us, can we find a place in the four-dimensional universe to establish a powerful force? The woman asked, and then Eternal Wind smiled. What do you think? The woman glanced at Eternal Wind. Plunder. Eternal Wind nodded. Actually, there have been many people who wanted to plunder the four-dimensional universe since a long time ago. Unfortunately, the restriction set by the prophet is too strong. No one has any way to go down. But now, the Myriad Dimensional Academy has removed the restriction. Moreover, they're allowing others to go down. This is an opportunity for us and we have to grasp it. As for how much we can reap, that will depend on our own luck. Ada laughed. Eternal Wind, your idea is not bad. I heard that there is a black-yellow great world down there. That is Zhou Xian's lair. We will choose that place. Eternal Wind smiled. Let's go. Let's get rich. Get rich, get rich. Ada laughed loudly. The three of them were about to go down when Eternal Wind suddenly turned his head. Not far away, a man was walking over slowly. The man was wearing a mask and his face couldn't be seen. The man walked in front of the three of them and smiled. The three of you want to go to the four-dimensional universe? Eternal Wind glanced at the man. You are? The man smiled. I'm Xianxia from the Worldwide Academy. Just now, I heard that brother wants to go to the four-dimensional universe to get rich. Coincidentally, I also have the same idea. How about we go together? Chapter 857. The person in front of them was naturally Zhou Xian. Worldwide Academy? Changfeng sized up the man in front of him. Are you from Wun or Literature Academy? Zhou Xian smiled. Wun. Changfeng glanced at Zhou Xian and didn't say anything. Zhou Xian smiled. It should be your first time going to the four-dimensional universe, right? Changfeng nodded. Yes. Zhou Xian smiled. I've been there once before, so I'm quite familiar with the place. If the three of you are willing, we can go together. Changfeng looked at Zhou Xian and didn't say anything. At this moment, the woman beside her suddenly sent a voice transmission. There's something strange about this person. Ada also said, be careful. Changfeng was silent for a moment and then he looked at Zhou Xian and smiled. Of course. Then please lead the way, Brother Xian. Zhou Xian laughed. The three of you come with me. After saying that, he walked towards the distance. Ada glanced at Zhou Xian and sent a voice transmission to Changfeng. I'm afraid this person doesn't come with good intentions. Changfeng smiled. We can use him. Ada hesitated and nodded. That's true. Soon the four of them arrived at the four-dimensional universe. In the starry sky, Changfeng looked at Zhou Xian. Brother Xian, do you know the Zhou Xian? Zhou Xian nodded and smiled. I know about Daoist. Changfeng asked. How strong is this person? Zhou Xian hesitated and smiled. He's not bad in the four-dimensional universe, but in the eyes of the three of you, he can't even withstand a single blow. Changfeng smiled. Is that so? Zhou Xian thought for a moment and said, Brother, you should know that the martial arts civilization of the four-dimensional universe is much weaker than our five-dimensional universe. How strong would a swordsman from such a world be? In my opinion, if the three of you wanted to kill him, it would only take a few seconds. Changfeng looked at Zhou Xian. Is Zhou Xian really as weak as you say? Zhou Xian laughed and said, Otherwise, do you all think that he is very strong? Eternal Wind shook his head. If he was really that weak, would your Myriad Dimensional Academy still issue this wanted order? Zhou Xian smiled. Because there seems to be some experts from the four-dimensional universe behind him. Eternal Wind stared at Zhou Xian. Those experts are so strong that your Myriad Dimension Academy can't do anything about them. Zhou Xian smiled and said, I don't know about that. I'm just a small student in Wuxia. That's all. Chong Feng stared at Zhou Xian without saying anything. Meanwhile, Ada suddenly said, aren't we going to the Sky-Earth world? At that time wouldn't we know Zhou Xian's true strength? Zhou Xian nodded. Right. When we arrive at the Sky-Earth world we'll be able to fight Zhou Xian. Eternal Wind glanced at Zhou Xian and said, Brother Xian, why have you come here? Zhou Xian laughed and said, I'm here to fish for some benefits. When he spoke up to here he paused for a moment and said, looks like you're very suspicious of me. Since it's like that then I won't be joining the three of you. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking he turned around and left. Eternal Wind looked at Zhou Xian and didn't say anything. Right at this moment, Ada suddenly said, Brother Xian, wait. Zhou Xian stopped and turned around to look at Ada. Ada laughed and said, Brother Xian, our goal is to get rich. Since we have the same goal then we can join forces. In any case our target is Zhou Xian. Isn't that right? Eternal Wind laughed and said, Brother Xian, I don't have any other intentions. You know that we have to be cautious when we're outside. Zhou Xian nodded lightly. I completely understand. Do the three of you want to kill Zhou Xian? Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Zhou Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment onward, Zhou Xian's position as crown prince is removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Zhou Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Zhou Xian is a crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and didn't dare to look directly at the Great Elder. However, she didn't leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the crown prince I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on you'll be my personal guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I'm willing to die 1,000 deaths. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this time Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak, when Zhou Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping! Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Zhou Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yiling bowed to everyone in the hall as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Zhou Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yiling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave." Yiling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yilang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yilang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master, Yilang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Flap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yiling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yilang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yilang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and his robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this time, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there and rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, Zhou Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Zhou Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping. Chapter 858. Li Yunqi looked at Zhou Xian. What's your name? Zhou Xian smiled. Mo Chuyen. This was the name of the Wuyuan student he had killed. The reason he had changed his name was because he wanted to be more cautious. Xuanye. Zhou Xian. If he met someone with a meticulous mind, he could easily expose himself. Moreover, if he met someone from the Myriad Dimension Academy and there was no Xuanye, it would be a bit embarrassing. Just like what Changfeng had said before, it was always good to be careful when going out. Li Yunqi looked at Zhou Xian. Did that dead Changfeng call you Brother Xian? Zhou Xian smiled. Alias. Li Yunqi looked at Zhou Xian and nodded. Follow me. With that, he turned and left. Zhou Xian looked at Li Yunqi. He could feel that this person was a bit on guard against him. It had to be said that these people were very cautious. Zhou Xian collected his thoughts and followed. At this moment, Lanxiao and the others had already been called back to the Black-Yellow Great World. Because more and more experts from the fifth dimension had come, they had to go back to guard the Black-Yellow Great World. As for the experts from the Dual Realm Sky, they had also been called back to the Black-Yellow Great World. The current Dual Realm Sky was not a safe place. Grand Elder Qin and the others also knew this, so they chose to go to the Black-Yellow Great World. Unity. Now everyone knew that the people of the fourth dimension had to be united. Otherwise, facing the people of the fifth dimension, everyone could only wait for death. On the way, Li Yunqi suddenly asked, Where did Brother Mo come from? Zhou Xian smiled. If Brother Li doesn't believe me, I will leave. Li Yunqi looked at Zhou Xian and did not speak. Zhou Xian also did not say anything. A moment later, Li Yunqi brought Zhou Xian to a starry sky. Just as they entered, several divine senses swept over. These divine senses directly fell on Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian looked into the distance and clenched his fists. Boom! A powerful force surged out of his body, and those divine senses were directly shattered. A voice sounded from afar. Then a man suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian and Zhou Xian. The man wore a black robe with a golden dragon embroidered on it. The man looked at Zhou Xian. Who are you? His tone was overbearing. Zhou Xian said, Mo Chuyen. The man looked at Li Yunqi and Li Yunqi said, I just got to know him. He's also here to reap some benefits. The man was expressionless. Is it useful? Xian smiled and said, "Won't you know once you try?" The man looked at Xian. In the next moment, a powerful dragon might swept towards Xian. Dragon might? What he was least afraid of in this life was the dragon's might. After all, there was once an ancient golden dragon that had fused with his soul. Xian did not move at all, allowing the dragon's might to strike him. Boom! The space around Xian trembled violently and shattered, but Xian was completely fine. Seeing this scene, the man narrowed his eyes. A hint of surprise flashed in Li Yunqi's eyes. The man looked at Xian. "You've absorbed my dragon's might." Xian smiled and said, "Can't I?" The man was about to attack again when Li Yunqi suddenly said, "Jun Wuyan, don't forget that we're here. The real purpose of this trip." The man named Jun Wuyan hesitated for a moment, then gave up on attacking. He glanced at Xian and did not say anything. Li Yunqi said, "Where are they?" Jun Wuyan opened his palm, and a golden jade seal appeared in his hand. He chanted a few words and soon, the space not far away from the three of them suddenly cracked. Jun Wuyan kept the jade seal. "Let's go." After saying that, he walked into the cracked space. Li Yunqi looked at Xian. "Let's go." After saying that, he also followed. Xian glanced around and then followed in. After entering, the scene changed and the three of them came to an unknown hall. In front of the hall, Xian found that there were two women and a man. The man was about 20 years old with long hair and he carried a zither on his back. In his hand he was holding an emerald green flute. Not far from the man sat a woman. The woman was lying on a stone block with her legs crossed, and there was a black iron chain wrapped around her arm. Opposite her, a woman in a long dress leaned against a long pillar with her arms crossed. She seemed to be resting. Seeing that Xian and the other two had come, the man with the zither looked at Xian and did not speak. Li Yunqi looked at everyone. "Everyone, our goal this time is to kill Xian. You may not know much about Xian. This person is young, but his swordsmanship has reached the breaking realm of this world. In addition, his realm has also reached the life-breaking realm of this world. He also has two extremely powerful swords in his hands. One is called the Executing Heaven Sword. This sword is extremely sharp and is known as the sharpest sword in the four-dimensional universe. If you meet this person, you must not fight this sword head-on." At this time, the woman sitting on the stone block not far away suddenly said, "Is he that strong?" Li Yunqi nodded. "I have already checked. Even in the five-dimensional universe, this sword is a divine weapon. You'd better not underestimate the power of this sword. Otherwise you may pay with your lives." At this time, the man with the zither suddenly asked, "What about the soul-suppressing sword?" Li Yunqi said, "This thing is very effective against the soul. When you fight with him, you must not let your body be destroyed. Otherwise this sword can easily destroy your soul." At this point he paused and then said, "However, the real strength of this Xian is not these two swords but his bloodline. This person's bloodline is extremely strange. Once he activates it, he will be like a madman and his battle strength will soar to an unreasonable level." Bloodline. At this time, the woman leaning against the pillar suddenly opened her eyes. "What bloodline?" Li Yunqi smiled. "Qianimo, I almost forgot that you also have a special bloodline." The woman called Qianimo looked at Li Yunqi and asked, "What bloodline does he have?" Li Yunqi shook his head. "I don't know. I only know that his bloodline is extremely terrifying. Once it is activated, his battle strength will soar. Therefore, if we attack, it's best to kill him in one blow and not give him any chance to activate his bloodline." At this point he paused and then said, "According to my investigation, there are a few stronger people in the black-yellow great world. These people are Xian's friends and their battle strength is not low. In addition, the powerhouses of the dual realm sky have also come to the black-yellow great world. Therefore we can't attack the black-yellow great world by force. We can only use a trick to lure Xian out." Jun Wuyan suddenly asked, "How do we lure him out?" Li Yunqi smiled. "It's very simple. Use his younger sister." Younger sister. Not far away, the woman sitting on the stone pillar suddenly sat up and looked at Li Yunqi. "He has a younger sister?" Li Yunqi nodded. This person attaches great importance to his younger sister. However, not long ago his younger sister suddenly disappeared, and we still don't know where she is. We can make use of this to lure him here and then kill him in one strike." Jun Wuyan said in a low voice. don't forget that he still has the prison pagoda. The prison pagoda. Li Yunqi nodded. Yes. Therefore if we make a move we must not hold back. We must not hold back at all. After saying that he looked at the crowd. Everyone, this person was able to make the Worldwide Academy return empty-handed several times. He is not an ordinary person. Don't underestimate him just because he is from the four-dimensional universe. Otherwise we will pay a painful price. Jun Wuyan suddenly said, Brother Li, I know that Yi Xian is not ordinary, but to be honest we don't need to take him too seriously. The martial arts civilization of the four-dimensional universe is like this. No matter how strong he is, how strong can he be? The woman sitting on the stone pillar also said, it's right to be cautious. However, as Wuyan said, we don't need to take this person too seriously. The man carrying the guqin suddenly said softly, no matter what, don't underestimate this person. As Brother Li said, it's fine if we don't make a move. Once we make a move, it's best to kill him in one blow. Moreover, we must be fast. Soon more and more people will come down. At that time, others may beat us to it. Li Yunqi nodded. Yes, I have received news that more and more people are coming to the four-dimensional universe, especially some big sects and families. They are preparing to send their disciples and people down to train. On the side, Jun Wuyan said with a smile. It seems that the five-dimensional universe wants to use the four-dimensional universe as a training ground. However, isn't the four-dimensional universe an excellent training ground for them? The woman sitting on the stone pillar said with a smile. Yes, it's the same for us. Jun Wuyan said with a smile. Yes, this Yi Xian is our first prey. As he said that, he looked at Li Yunqi. Brother Li, who do you think is more suitable to lure him? Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian, who had been silent, and said with a smile, how about we let Brother Imo do this? Yi Xian was silent. Li Yunqi said with a smile, Brother Imo only needs to lure him here and leave the rest to us. After this is done, the soul-suppressing sword on Yi Xian will be given to Brother Imo. How about it? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I want the executing heaven sword. Li Yunqi laughed. Sure. Anyway, we are not swordsmen. After this is done we will give you the sword. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what should I do? Li Yunqi smiled slightly. You go and report that you have Yi Ling's whereabouts. Yi Xian will definitely follow you. As long as he comes here, leave the rest to us. Yi Xian nodded. As he said that, he turned around and left. At this moment Jun Wuyan, who was not far away, suddenly said, wait. Yi Xian stopped and looked at Jun Wuyan. Jun Wuyan said in a deep voice, you won't betray us, right? Yi Xian spread out his hands. Your Excellency, do you think I will benefit from betraying you? Moreover, I am a person from the fifth dimension. How can I team up with a fourth dimension ant? Jun Wuyan glanced at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. Happy working with you. Yi Xian nodded. Happy working with you all. Li Yunqi nodded slightly. Be careful, Brother Imo. Yi Xian is very cunning. You must be careful. Yi Xian nodded. I will be very careful. Chapter 859. When he saw Yi Xian leave, Jun Wuyan suddenly said, Brother Li, can he be trusted? Li Yunqi smiled and said, he has no reason to side with Yi Xian. After all, he's from the fifth dimension. If he sides with Yi Xian, then wouldn't he become the public enemy of the fifth dimension? Moreover, he's very weak. He knows very well that even if he sides with Yi Xian might not want him. So he can only choose to trust us. The woman on the nearby stone block suddenly said, are we really going to give him that sword? Li Yunqi roared with laughter. Miss Hubin, what do you think? The woman called Hubin gave Li Yunqi a thumbs up. You're really cunning. Li Yunqi shook his head. He's greedy. Jun Wuyan nodded. Don't work together with someone who's too much stronger than you. Everyone fell silent when they heard this. Any kind of cooperation was actually established on the basis that everyone's strength was equal. If one side was too strong and the other side was too weak, then such cooperation was bound to have a bad ending for the weaker side. Li Yunqi opened his palm and a palm-sized stone plate appeared in his hand. He silently recited a chant, and in next to no time strands of white light suddenly flew out from the stone plate. In the end, these strands of white light completely entered the space around them. Formation. Li Yunqi said, I've already sealed the space here. After Yi Xian enters, the space here will be reinforced. He won't be able to easily break through the space here and escape. At that time, please don't hold back and strive to kill him with a single strike. Zhou Xian nodded as well. Qian Mo Hubin and brother Gu Qing. The three of you are dragons and phoenixes amongst men, and your strengths are extremely formidable. However, when you face Yi Xian later, please don't hold back and strive to not make any mistakes. The man with the zither on his back, Gu Qing, nodded slightly. Understood. Qian Mo, who was leaning against the pillar, nodded slightly as well. All right. Hubin smiled and said, don't worry. Yi Xian's head is too valuable. I don't want to lose it because I underestimated him. Li Yunqi nodded slightly. That's good. As he spoke, he looked into the distance. I hope nothing unexpected happens. After Yi Xian left that space, he did not return to the black-yellow great world. Instead, he went to the dual realm sky. There were not many people left in the dual realm sky. To be more precise, there were no experts with a thought universe. Most of the experts in the dual realm sky had gone to the northern region of the black-yellow great world. Those who had appeared in the dual realm sky were basically all experts from the fifth dimension. Yi Xian was guarding the seal. Not long after, two men suddenly flew down from the seal. Both men were dressed in black robes and held long spears in their hands. After the two of them came down, they looked around and were about to leave when Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of them. When they saw Yi Xian, the two of them immediately became vigilant. Yi Xian looked at the spear-wielding man. Are the two of you here to kill Yi Xian? The spear-wielding man stared at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian said, I am Mo Chuyan, also from the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension. The spear-wielding man sized up Yi Xian. What's the matter? Yi Xian smiled. It's nothing. After saying this, he turned around and left. At this time, the spear-wielding man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, staring at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian was silent. The spear-wielding man was about to speak, but Yi Xian sighed. You're too late. The spear-wielding man narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Yi Xian said, that fifth dimension treasure has already fallen into someone else's hands. The spear-wielding man frowned. Yi Xian has already been killed? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian has already been killed. You're too late. The spear-wielding man said in a deep voice. Who killed him? Yi Xian said, Li Yunqi, Zhou Xian and the others. Li Yunqi. The spear-wielding man frowned. Modu Qing Nation. Yi Xian nodded. There are a total of 5 of them, and the 5 of them have already joined forces to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian's treasure has already fallen into their hands. Hearing this, the spear-wielding man was silent. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Do you want to fight? The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian. What do you mean? Yi Xian said, Although they have already killed Yi Xian, they have yet to leave. Instead, they are hiding somewhere. Do you want to fight? The spear-wielding man shook his head. If there were 5 of them, we wouldn't be able to defeat them. Yi Xian said, Divide them. The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian. Divide them? Yi Xian nodded. As far as I know, they are currently unevenly dividing the spoils and there are already conflicts. Therefore they haven't left. This is our chance. The spear-wielding man suddenly asked, Why do you know so much? Yi Xian smiled. Because I was in cahoots with them. However, after killing Yi Xian, they want to get rid of me. The spear-wielding man stared at Yi Xian and asked, Why? Yi Xian shrugged. Because I am the weakest. The spear-wielding man was silent. Yi Xian said, This is an opportunity because they may be leaving the 4th dimension soon. Once they leave the 4th dimension, it will be difficult to obtain the 5th dimension treasure. The spear-wielding man looked at the man beside him and the man looked at Yi Xian. Our goal is not that treasure. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. With that he turned and left. His speed was very fast and in the blink of an eye he had already disappeared into the horizon. The spear-wielding man said in a deep voice, Brother, what do you think? The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian in the distance. Follow him, don't let him find you. With that, the two disappeared from the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian flew in the air. Soon he arrived at the space where Li Yunqi and the others were. As soon as he appeared, Li Yunqi and the others who were hiding in the dark suddenly became alert. There was no one behind Yi Xian. Seeing this, Li Yunqi frowned and directly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He is not coming? Yi Xian looked a little flustered and his tone was also a little shaky. He is coming. I will leave the rest to you. With that he turned and ran. He was very fast and in the blink of an eye he disappeared into the distance. Seeing Yi Xian escape, Li Yunqi frowned slightly. Coward. With that he glanced around but there was no trace of Yi Xian. Li Yunqi said coldly, Yi Xian, I know that you are very good at concealment. If you want to know the whereabouts of your sister then come out. At this time the space in front of Li Yunqi suddenly cracked and then a man walked out. The person who came was Yi Xian, but at this moment he was not wearing a mask but his real body. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in his eyes. You want to know the whereabouts of your sister? Yi Xian nodded. Li Yunqi said, hand over the divine item and I will tell you where your sister is. With that he slowly clenched his right hand. He was ready to attack. Because he knew that Yi Xian would definitely not hand over the divine item. However, in the distance Yi Xian suddenly flicked his finger, and a Xiao Ta directly landed in front of him. Seeing this scene, Li Yunqi, who was ready to attack, was stunned. Zhou Xian and the others in the dark were also stunned. He handed it over just like that. Are you kidding me? Yi, this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Xian suddenly said, where is she? Li Yunqi's mouth twitched. The development of this matter was a little different from what he had expected. Without thinking too much, Li Yunqi suddenly said angrily, attack. However, there was no movement around. Seeing this, Li Yunqi's face darkened. At this moment he suddenly understood. Now that the tower was with him, what was everyone's goal? It was for the tower not to kill Yi Xian. Since the tower was already with him, why would Zhou Xian and the others in the dark attack Yi Xian? Li Yunqi knew that now, everyone was targeting him, not Yi Xian. He had to divert the conflict. Li Yunqi looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said in horror, you have an ambush. After saying that he turned around and ran at an extremely fast speed, disappearing at the end of the starry sky in the blink of an eye. Li Yunqi was stunned. He ran away just like that. What was going on? As soon as Yi Xian disappeared, Zhou Xian and the others appeared in front of Li Yunqi. Immortal, who had escaped earlier, also appeared. Zhou Xian looked at Li Yunqi and Li Yunqi said in a deep voice, everyone, this matter is quite strange. At this time Immortal suddenly said, this is the fifth dimensional treasure. According to rumors, this thing can open the all-creation book house and obtain the prophet treasure. Hearing Immortal's words, Li Yunqi suddenly looked at him and said, what do you mean? Immortal said in a deep voice, Brother Li, this treasure does not belong to you alone. It belongs to everyone. Don't tell me you want to keep it for yourself? Li Yunqi said angrily, you dare to sow discord. Immortal seemed to be somewhat afraid and immediately retreated several zhang, not daring to say anything. Li Yunqi looked at the world prison pagoda in his hand. At this moment he had to admit that he felt like he was dreaming. This pagoda was a little unreal. Divide? This thought flashed in Li Yunqi's mind, but it was just a flash. There was only one pagoda. How could he divide it? He could not divide it at all. Thinking of this, Li Yunqi looked at Zhou Xian and the others and said with a smile, everyone, I, Li Yunqi, am not a selfish person. Since I have obtained the pagoda, I should share it with everyone. Therefore I have decided. After saying this, he suddenly looked behind Zhou Xian and the others. Yi Xian. Hearing Li Yunqi's words, Zhou Xian subconsciously turned around. However, there was nothing behind him. Seeing this, Zhou Xian's expression changed greatly. He immediately turned around, but at this moment, Li Yunqi had already disappeared into the horizon. Although Zhou Xian fell for it, Gu Qing, who was carrying a zither on his back, did not fall for it. The instant Li Yunqi escaped, he immediately chased after him. However, this Li Yunqi's speed slightly exceeded his expectations. In the blink of an eye, Li Yunqi disappeared from this space, and Zhou Xian and the others frantically chased after him. When Li Yunqi left this space, he encountered two men holding long spears. Seeing Li Yunqi, the spear-wielding man said ferociously, that pagoda is really in your hands. After saying this, he was about to attack, but he was stopped by the man beside him. Because of this, Li Yunqi directly disappeared into the horizon. At the end of the horizon, Li Yunqi directly crushed a black stone. In the next moment, the space above his head directly trembled. Behind him, Zhou Xian suddenly said, he is calling the experts of Demonic City. Everyone, let's call together. Soon, the starry sky in the field began to tremble. Everyone was calling. P.S. Recently, before updating, I will check it several times. I dare not guarantee that there are no typos, but I will try to make sure there are no typos. If there are any mistakes, please correct me. End of this chapter. Chapter 860. In the dark, Zhou Xian quietly looked at the starry sky in the distance. There one person was escaping and several people were chasing. In fact, with his strength he could completely kill Li Yunqi. In fact, he could kill Li Yunqi, Zhou Xian and everyone else. If he fought them head-on, he was not sure that he could defeat Li Yunqi and the others. After all, these 5 people were not weak. It would be very difficult for him to fight 1 against 5. However, he had forgotten that he had the immeasurable sword. If he carried out an assassination, these people would not be able to stop him. However, this time he did not directly kill them. This was because he knew that these people did not have simple backgrounds. If he killed the young ones, the old ones would come. It could be said that there was no end to them. Killing a few people was not meaningful at all. After all, he was not alone. He had many things to consider, such as the black-yellow great world, or the entire 4-dimensional universe. Now, he was leading the people of the 4-dimensional universe to fight against the people of the 5-dimensional universe. In this situation, he could not rely on killing alone. He had to use some intelligence. Without thinking too much, Zhou Xian disappeared. At the end of the distant starry sky, Li Yunqi was frantically escaping. The current him was a little crazy. He had obtained the treasure of the 5th dimension. There was a voice in his heart telling him that he had to give up this thing because it would bring him a disaster. However, this inner voice was quickly drowned out by his desire and ambition. The treasure of the 5th dimension. The treasure of the prophet. This tower could not only change his fate, but it could also change the fate of Demonic City. He, Li Yunqi, could use this treasure to become the most powerful person in Demonic City in tens of thousands of years and lead Demonic City to the peak of the 5th dimension. It was worth fighting for. Li Yunqi raised his head and looked at the end of the sky. At most a quarter of an hour, the experts of Demonic City would arrive. He only needed to hold on for a quarter of an hour. A quarter of an hour. Li Yunqi took a deep breath and began to accelerate crazily. At this moment his speed was raised to the limit. Behind him, Zhou Xian and the others were also chasing crazily. They knew that this was their chance. Once Li Yunqi brought the treasure back to the 5th dimension, it would be difficult for them to get it again. Thinking of this, Zhou Xian and the others also accelerated crazily. Soon Li Yunqi was getting closer and closer to the seal. At this moment he clenched his fists tightly and his blood was boiling. This was because he had already received news from the experts of Shanghai. The experts of Shanghai had already come out to pick him up. Obviously, Shanghai also approved of his actions this time. Once they obtained this 5th-dimensional treasure, the fate of Demonic City would change. Of course, the reason why Shanghai dared to do this was because Shanghai itself was not weak. Very soon, Li Yunqi arrived at the seal of the dual realm sky. He raised his speed to the maximum. It was right in front of him, because the powerhouses of Modu City were already behind this seal. As long as he could pass through this seal, he would be able to meet up with the powerhouses of Modu City. Just as Li Yunqi was about to enter the sealed area, a long spear suddenly pierced through the air. Like a bolt of lightning, the spear arrived in front of Li Yunqi in an instant. Li Yunqi was shocked. If he made a move, he would have to stop. As long as he stopped, Zhou Xian and the others behind him would immediately catch up. And now he had no choice but to stop, because the spear speed was too fast. Just as Li Yunqi was about to make a move, a powerful force suddenly attacked from the side. This force was even faster and directly hit the long spear. Boom! The long spear was instantly sent flying. Li Yunqi was slightly taken aback. Someone was helping him. Without thinking too much, Li Yunqi directly entered the sealed area and then disappeared into the starry sky. Behind him, Zhou Xian and the others did not give up and madly chased after him. Very soon, Zhou Xian and the others all disappeared into the starry sky of the 4-dimensional universe. Below, the 2 men with long spears turned their heads and glanced to the right. They were the ones who had made a move just now. They also wanted to stop Li Yunqi, but they had been secretly stopped by someone. Who was it? Neither of them knew, because the person who had made a move did not appear. At this moment, the man with long spears in the lead suddenly said, "Brother, what should we do now?" The man next to him raised his head and looked at the seal. "Let's go." After saying that, the 2 of them directly disappeared. On the right, Zhou Xian walked out. It was him who had made a move just now. Xian took a look at the sealed land and then disappeared from where he was. After the seal, as soon as Li Yunqi rushed out, an old man in a black robe suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man in the black robe grabbed Li Yunqi and said in a trembling voice, "How is it?" Li Yunqi immediately took out the world prison pagoda and then handed it to the old man in the black robe. Elder. It was not that he had not thought of embezzling it, but he was very clear that with his strength, it was impossible for him to embezzle such a treasure. If he embezzled it, it would be a dead end. The old man in the black robe glanced at the world prison pagoda in his hand and said with some excitement, "It's the world prison pagoda." As he said that, he looked at Li Yunqi. Well done. At this moment, Zhou Xian and the others behind him had also caught up. Seeing the old man in the black robe, the faces of Zhou Xian and the others immediately darkened. An expert from Shanghai. An expert of this level was not someone they could fight at all. The old man in the black robe glanced at Zhou Xian and the others and said with a smile, "Everyone, this item is now in the custody of the old man. I don't need you to escort it." After saying that, he looked at Li Yunqi. "Let's go." Just at this moment, a few powerful auras suddenly assaulted them from afar. The old man's face instantly darkened when he saw this scene. In next to no time, a middle-aged man appeared in front of the old man in the black robe. When he saw this person, Zhou Xian hurriedly walked over to the middle-aged man and bowed respectfully, "Uncle Wang." The person who had come was Zhou Xian of the Qing Kingdom, the Qing Kingdom's prince. Beside the middle-aged man was a woman in a white dress, a veil over her face and a zither on her back. At the side, Gu Qing walked over to the woman and bowed respectfully, "Martial Aunt." The Heavenly Sound Palace's Lin Miaoyin. Besides these two people, there were two other old men. They were the Qian clan's grand elder, Wan Yunzhong, and the He clan's grand elder, He Wanlian. The old man in the black robe suddenly laughed. "What? Are you going to rob me?" "Rob me?" At the side, Zhou Xian suddenly laughed coldly. "Shanghai really doesn't even care about face." The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Kid, didn't the adults in your clan teach you to respect your elders?" Zhou Xian suddenly said, "What's going on?" Zhou Xian said in a deep voice, "Uncle Wang, it's like this. The five of us agreed to deal with Xian together. We also agreed that if we obtained the fifth dimensional treasure, we would all share it. However, after we obtained the fifth dimensional treasure, Li Yunqi wanted to keep it for himself." Keep it for himself. Hearing this, Zhou Xian and the others looked at the old man in the black robe with unfriendly expressions. Li Yunqi suddenly said, "Zhou Xian, let me ask you, did you help to obtain this treasure?" Zhou Xian asked in reply, "Then did you help?" Hearing this, Li Yunqi was also stunned. He really didn't help. He also didn't expect that Xian would hand it over just like that. Zhou Xian suddenly laughed coldly. "If it wasn't for us, would Xian be afraid of you? Would he hand over that divine object so easily to you? Li Yunqi, this thing belongs to everyone, not just you. You want to keep it for yourself? In your dreams." Li Yunqi was about to speak when the old man in the black robe beside him suddenly laughed. "Everyone, let's not talk about reason. All the treasures in the world belong to those with power, right?" Zhou Xian chuckled. "Why, Li Guangxing, do you think you're stronger than all of us?" Li Guangxing laughed. "I dare not. Who doesn't know that the king of the Qing kingdom has 2 purple runes?" But, at this point he suddenly opened his palm. In his hand there was a purple rune. In the next moment, the space around him and Li Yunqi began to directly become illusory. Space rune. Zhou Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Want to leave? You're thinking too much." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly rushed out. Boom. A powerful force blasted the space where Li Yunqi and Li Guangxing were, and the entire space trembled. However, Li Guangxing and Li Yunqi who were in the space became more and more illusory. Obviously, they were about to disappear completely. Suddenly, Lin Miaoyin from the Heavenly Sound Palace suddenly tossed out a purple rune. The rune appeared directly above Li Guangxing and Li Yunqi. Li Guangxing's expression changed drastically when he saw the purple rune. Space Cage Rune. As soon as he finished speaking, the space around him began to shrink layer by layer. But right at this moment, a mysterious force suddenly appeared in this space. In the blink of an eye, Li Guangxing and Li Yunqi disappeared. Everyone was stunned. Lin Miaoyin suddenly looked to the right with a cold gaze. "Who's there?" As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand, and the space that was 300 m away instantly exploded. However, there was no one there. Lin Miaoying frowned slightly when she saw this. Zhou Xian also glanced coldly at the space. He had sensed that someone had made a move just now, but the person's aura had only flashed for a moment and he couldn't track it. Everyone's expressions were slightly unsightly. The pagoda of prison had fallen into the hands of the capital. Meanwhile, the He clan's grand elder spoke abruptly, "Everyone, that treasure should have been shared by all of us." However, the capital went back on their word and intended to take it for themselves. "We can't let this matter rest just like that." Zhou Xian suddenly said, "Let's go to the capital." All of them gazed at Zhou Xian and the latter spoke softly, "Not many people are aware of this now. However, they'll be aware that the treasure has fallen into the capital's hands in 2 hours at most. At that time it would be extremely difficult for us to obtain it again. We still have a chance if we go now." The He clan's grand elder spoke in a low voice, "But that means that we have to fight them head-on." Zhou Xian spoke indifferently, "What else can we do? Should we just suffer for nothing?" The He clan's grand elder fell silent for a short moment before he spoke fiercely, "We can't afford to suffer such a loss. Let's go to the capital. If they don't hand it over today, then we'll flatten the capital." It didn't take long for all of them to leave. Their destination was the capital. The capital. The space above the capital suddenly split open. Then Li Guangxing and Li Yunqi walked out. After they came out, Li Guangxing suddenly asked, "That Yi Xian handed it over so easily?" Li Guangxing nodded, "Yes." Li Guangxing was silent for a moment before he sneered, "It seems that this Yi Xian is also a coward. Not only is he a coward, but he's also an idiot. He actually handed over such a divine item just like that. He's really stupid beyond measure." As he spoke, he looked at Li Yunqi, "Go and inform the Myriad Dimension Academy. Tell them that we've already obtained this item and ask them to send someone to retrieve it." Li Yunqi was stunned. "Uncle, you're going to hand it over?" Li Guangxing nodded. "This item isn't something that our capital can possess. We can only hand it over. Of course, we can't hand it over for nothing. We have to ask the Worldwide Academy for those benefits. Not only that." As he spoke, his eyes narrowed. "This time, we have to borrow the blade of the Worldwide Academy to kill some of our opponents." As he spoke, a smile appeared on his face. As if he had thought of something, he looked at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand. "This Yi Xian isn't just an ordinary idiot. He actually doesn't know how to use such a treasure. Idiot." Chapter 861. Not far away from Li Yunqi and Li Guangxing, Yi Xian stood there quietly. He was in an empty space, so the two of them couldn't find him at all. When he heard Li Guangxing's words, Yi Xian didn't feel happy, nor did he gloat. On the contrary, Li Guangxing gave him a reminder. People often thought that they were smart, thinking that everything was under their control. They didn't know that they were in the hands of others. Don't think too highly of yourself and don't think too highly of others. Yi Xian glanced at Li Guangxing, who was not far away, and then quietly retreated. At this time, Li Yunqi disappeared. He was heading to the Worldwide Academy. As Li Guangxing had said, Shanghai didn't have such a treasure. If Shanghai dared to take it for themselves, they wouldn't live past the next day. Although Shanghai wasn't weak in the vast fifth dimension, Shanghai wasn't considered the top. There weren't many forces that could destroy Shanghai, but there weren't many either. Therefore, when he obtained this treasure, Li Guangxing had already decided to hand it over. Of course, he wouldn't hand it over for nothing. Shanghai could use it to obtain many benefits. Li Guangxing glanced around, a trace of doubt in his eyes. At this moment, he suddenly remembered something. Just now, someone had secretly helped him. Who was it that helped him? What was the other party's goal? Li Guangxing frowned. On the other side, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged in space. He asked in his heart, "Miss Lian Qian, just now I saw them use that talisman. What kind of talisman was it?" A moment later, Lian Qian's voice rang out. "In this world, there's a profession known as a talisman master. This kind of person can gather all sorts of powerful energies and spatial divine abilities, and then draw them into a talisman. With this kind of talisman, even if you're an ordinary person, you'll still be able to release a powerful force. There are also strong and weak talismans. From weak to strong, they are blue, red, purple, orange, and the legendary black. The higher the level of the talisman, the more power it contains." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "In other words, this kind of power isn't your own?" Lian Qian said, Yes. However, these runes are like your executing heaven sword. Do you think the executing heaven sword is considered your own power? Xian was silent. Qian continued, in the fifth dimension there are not only talisman masters, but there are also alchemists and some refiners. These professions have extremely high statuses in the fifth dimension. In the past, before I went down, our fifth dimension already had talisman sect, medicine king sect and refiner sect. These sects are extremely powerful and are only second to some special forces. Xian asked, what special forces? Qian said, for example the Azura Hell. Xian frowned. Why is Linger a special force? The blacksmith said, I can't explain it to you either. In short, that place isn't simple. Even the current Myriad Dimension Academy doesn't dare to provoke that place. Xian asked in a deep voice, Miss Qian, what is the strongest power in the fifth dimension? Qian said, it used to be the Myriad Dimension Academy because Master was there, but after Master disappeared, it might have been the Master of the fifth dimension. However, so much time has passed, so this place must have changed. Therefore I don't know. Xian nodded slightly. At this time, Qian said, don't look down on those runes, especially those that have reached the purple level. The power contained within these runes is extremely powerful. You might not be able to resist it. Xian frowned. So powerful? Qian said, it is very powerful. Take a purple power rune for example. The power it contains is not inferior to your current power. Most importantly, it only needs to consume a bit of the user's spirit chi. If you were to use a powerful power, it would consume a lot of your own spirit chi. If this goes on, you'll definitely be at a disadvantage. And if you encounter an orange rune, the power of this rune is even more powerful. You must be extremely careful when you encounter this kind of rune. Don't be careless. Xian suddenly said, Miss Qian, what rank is my Dao Law in this place? Qian was silent. Xian asked, what's wrong? Qian said, I almost forgot about this. Xian was a little puzzled. What do you mean? Qian said, runes are within the scope of laws and Dao laws are higher than laws. To put it simply, if you have the spatial Dao law, then all spatial runes are useless against you. In other words, you can easily suppress the other party. And your Dao law is a rune that targets the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins. In any case, as long as the other party borrows the power of the earth, your Dao law can suppress them. Xian suddenly asked, what about the Dao law of dreams? Qian said, in this world there are some mysterious cultivators who specialize in the power of dreams. I remember that there was a dream accessing sect in the past. This sect had asked Master many times for the Dao law of dreams, but Master didn't give it to them because the sect leader of the dream accessing sect was very ambitious. Xian said with a smile, Miss Qian, in other words, as long as you are here, any sealing runes are useless against me, right? Qian said, you can say that. Xian smiled slightly. At this moment he realized how terrifying the Dao laws he possessed were. At this moment Qian suddenly said, you have to be careful of a profession, curse masters. These people are very strange. If you encounter them, you must not underestimate them. Xian was a little curious. What's a curse master? Qian said, it's a rather evil profession. Back then the founder of this profession was the Cursed Woman. She once used an extremely powerful forbidden heavenly curse technique on Master. However, she brought disgrace upon herself. In the end, she was suppressed and sealed by Master. However, this woman was also very powerful back then. Especially those curse techniques of hers, they are very strange. Because their curse techniques are based on karma, once you are entangled by them, you will be plagued by bad luck. In short, if you encounter such people, you have to be very careful. Xian nodded, understood. Qian continued, if there's a chance, you can find a powerful blacksmith and ask him to help you inscribe runes on your executing heaven sword. Xian said in a low voice, do I need to inscribe runes on my sword too? Qian said, runes can't replace your sword, but they can play a very good supporting role. For example, if there's an additional purple rune on your sword, the power of your sword will become even stronger. Or, if there's an additional rune that reduces consumption, then when you use this executing heaven sword, the consumption of spiritual energy will be greatly reduced. Xian was a little curious, can it be done like this? Qian said, yes, you can try it in the future. Xian nodded. He raised his head and looked not far away. At this moment, several powerful auras came from the horizon. Zhou Xian and the others had arrived. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. The show was about to start. In the sky above Shanghai, Li Guangxing looked at the horizon. He smiled coldly without a trace of fear. Soon Zhou Xian and the others appeared in front of Li Guangxing. Zhou Xian looked at Li Guangxing and slowly clenched his right hand. Just as he was about to attack, Li Guangxing suddenly said, "Everyone, do you really want to fight to the death?" Zhou Xian looked at Li Guangxing. "If this item was obtained by your Shanghai Li clan, my Qing nation would definitely not touch it. However, this item was not obtained by your Li clan alone. It was obtained by everyone together. What right does your Li clan have to keep it to yourself?" Li Guangfeng said in a low voice, "Zhou Xian, if it wasn't for Yunqi's plan, we wouldn't have been able to obtain this item. Therefore it's only right that this item belongs to the Li family." Zhou Xian still wanted to say something, but Lin Miaoyin suddenly spoke up. "Why are you wasting time with him? He's obviously trying to take it for himself." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a step forward and squatted down. At the same time, the guqin behind her appeared in front of her. She lightly plucked it with her fingers. The sound of the guqin resounded abruptly, and then the space in front of Li Guangxing was suddenly torn apart. Li Guangxing's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly stretched out his arms. After that, a pair of golden bracers appeared on his arms, and then he crisscrossed his arms and suddenly raised them forward to block the attack. Bang! 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 Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the surroundings. Strands of white light that were as thin as a needle and thread were shuttling about incessantly around Li Guangxing, and Li Guangxing used his arms to resist them. Bang! Bang! Li Guangxing retreated repeatedly. A short moment later, he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and then a ray of golden light suddenly erupted from his arms. Bang! The space in the surroundings trembled violently, and then it started to crack like a spider web. On Li Guangxing's arms were two strings that were as thin as a needle and thread. Moreover, countless cracks had appeared on Li Guangxing's golden bracers as well. The corners of Li Guangxing's mouth curled up slightly as he gazed at Lin Miaoyin. What a great sound attack! It really does live up to its reputation. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly pressed his palms together, and the bracers suddenly fused into a golden spear. He leaped up and stabbed the spear down from midair, and then a ray of light rained down from the tip of the spear like an umbrella. Lin Miaoyin glanced up at the sky, and then she suddenly pressed her hands against the zither strings. In the next moment she suddenly released them. Bang! A deafening sound of a zither suddenly resounded, and then a ray of white light shot into the sky and enveloped Li Guangxing within it. Rumble! The space in the surroundings trembled and then both of them retreated repeatedly. After Li Guangxing stopped moving, he gazed at the spear in his hand, and it had completely cracked apart. He waved his right hand lightly, and then a violet talisman suddenly appeared on the spear. In next to no time the spear started to repair itself at an extremely swift pace. Lin Miaoyin suddenly said, "Let's attack together." Zhou Xian nodded slightly, and he was just about to attack when a formidable aura suddenly appeared in the distance. Li Guangxing suddenly roared with laughter when he noticed the formidable aura. Ha ha ha! It didn't take long for an old man in a white robe to appear in front of Li Guangxing. There was a small, dimensional character on his chest. An expert from Myriad Dimension Academy. The old man gazed at Li Guangxing. "Where's the treasure?" Li Guangxing smiled. "So it's Elder Li Jinwu. Welcome to Shanghai, Elderly." Li Jinwu gazed at Li Guangxing. "The treasure." Li Guangxing nodded slightly and then he opened his palm. However, there was nothing in his palm. Li Guangxing frowned slightly, and then his expression changed in next to no time. "The World Prison Pagoda? The pagoda?" Li Guangxing's face was filled with astonishment. P.S. Because of the inspection, the update was delayed. Sorry. Chapter 862. At this moment, Li Guangxing's face was pale and his hands were trembling. The pagoda had vanished. He didn't know how it had vanished. All he knew was that if he didn't take out the pagoda now, he would die without a complete corpse. Not only would he die without a complete corpse, but Shanghai would be dragged down as well. But why did the pagoda vanish? Li Guangxing's mind was filled with questions. Meanwhile, Li Jinwu from the Worldwide Academy frowned. What's wrong? Li Guangxing spoke in a low voice. The pagoda is gone. It's gone. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Li Jinwu was slightly stunned as well, and then his eyes narrowed slightly while a cold glint flickered within them. Are you playing with the old man? Li Guangxing spoke in a low voice. Elderly, the treasure really has vanished. How dare you? Li Jinwu suddenly roared furiously, and then he flicked his sleeve, causing a powerful force to sweep out. Bang! Li Guangxing instantly retreated explosively. On the other side in the dark, Yi Xian's gaze fell on Li Jinwu and he was somewhat shocked. This old man's strength was not ordinary. Li Guangxing felt extremely aggrieved. He knew that he and Shanghai had been schemed against. Who schemed against me? As if he'd thought of something, he suddenly gazed at Zhou Xian and the others. It's all of you. You're the ones who framed Shanghai. Zhou Xian gazed at Li Guangxing. Li Guangxing, continue your performance. We'll just watch quietly. Li Guangxing gazed at Li Jinwu. Elderly, they're definitely the ones who joined forces to frame Shanghai. Elderly, please investigate this. Li Jinwu looked at Li Guangxing. You asked your Shanghai disciples to inform me that the treasure is in your hands. Just now when I asked you, you were prepared to give it to me. But now you're telling me that they framed you. Do you think I'm stupid? Li Guangxing's expression was quite unsightly. Li Jinwu's eyes narrowed slightly. Li Guangxing, according to the old man, you're trying to take the treasure of the worldwide academy for yourself. The old man will give you one last chance. If you don't hand it over, then the old man will torture you today. Li Guangxing's expression was ugly to the extreme. At this moment he felt extremely wronged. Seeing that Li Guangxing didn't speak, Li Jinwu suddenly disappeared. Li Guangxing was greatly alarmed when he saw this scene. He immediately turned around and ran. His speed was extremely fast and in the blink of an eye he entered Demonic City. But in next to no time, a powerful force directly sent him flying. Everyone was stunned. An old man walked out of Demonic City. Li Guangxing, who was blasted flying, hurriedly said, Ancestor, save me. Ancestor. The old man in front of him was the number one figure in Shanghai, Li Nianxing. Li Nianxing didn't look at Li Guangxing. Instead he looked at Li Jinwu, who was not far away. Brother Li, you should know that even if you gave us 100 guts, we wouldn't dare to take this item for ourselves. Moreover, if we wanted to take this item for ourselves, we wouldn't have informed you. Li Jinwu said, then give me an explanation. Li Nianxing nodded. Of course. As he spoke he looked at Li Guangxing. Explain. Li Guangxing said in a low voice, it was still in my spatial ring just now. But when Elderly came here the treasure suddenly disappeared. Zhou Xian sneered. Suddenly disappeared? Can't you make up a better reason? This chapter isn't finished. Please continue. Li Guangxing said in a low voice. I feel that someone is framing Demonic City. Meanwhile Zhou Xian shook his head. I feel that Demonic City is treating us like fools. As he spoke he looked at Li Jinwu. Elderly, we can all testify that the treasure is in Li Guangxing's hands. In my opinion the Li family wants to take it for themselves. Elderly, I suggest that we directly destroy Demonic City. Zhou Xian. Li Guangxing stared fixedly at Zhou Xian. You want my Li family to die so badly? What? Is the death of my Li family beneficial to you? Zhou Xian smiled. Li Guangxing, what did you say to us before? Such a divine item, if you have the strength to obtain it, you can run away with it. Now you called Elder Li of the Myriad Dimensional Academy over and told him that the pagoda disappeared. Are you insulting our intelligence? Li Guangxing was about to speak when Li Jinwu suddenly said, Li family, the old man doesn't want to waste words with you. I'll give you one last chance. If you don't hand over the treasure, Demonic City will disappear from this world today. Li Nianxing looked at Li Guangxing. That item, is it in your hands? Li Guangxing shook his head. It's not in my hands. When he spoke up to here he seemed to have thought of something and he hurriedly said, when Chi-Chi and I used the spatial talisman to escape earlier, someone was helping us from the shadows. It's absolutely that person who helped us. Right, it's absolutely that person who's playing tricks. Sigh. Li Nianxing shook his head and sighed. Such a divine item fell into your hands so easily. Even if you think with your toes, you should know that it's not normal. Li Guangxing slightly lowered his head. I was stupid. Li Nianxing looked at Li Jinwu. Brother Li, has this matter been resolved? Li Jinwu was about to speak when Lin Yanqing suddenly said, "Actually, Brother Li should also know that there's something fishy about this matter. Firstly, Yi Xian handing over the item so easily is not normal. Secondly, Yun Qi being able to bring it back so easily is also not normal. Thirdly, Guangxing isn't stupid. If he really wanted to keep the item for himself, he wouldn't have sent someone to invite Brother Li. To be honest, the life and death of Demonic City isn't important. What's important is that if we are all used by others to kill each other, then the real mastermind will definitely laugh his head off." At this point he cupped his fists at the crowd. "Everyone, we have more or less a grudge between us. However, there is indeed something fishy about today's matter. Please give my Li family a chance and let my Li family investigate this matter thoroughly. Of course, during the investigation, no one from my Li family will leave Demonic City. If we can't find anything, the old man and Guangxing are willing to pay with their lives." Hearing this, everyone was silent. Although everyone wanted Li Guangxing to die, they weren't stupid. Now that they thought about it, the matter was indeed fishy. The Worldwide Academy spent so much money but still couldn't obtain a fifth-dimensional treasure, yet a little disciple from the Li family managed to obtain it. Moreover, he even brought it back safely. Was this normal? It was definitely not normal. Could it be that someone was secretly planning all of this? Li Jinwu was also silent. He was the clearest about how much the Academy had paid for the World Prison Pagoda. Even so, the Academy still couldn't bring it back. However, this Li Yunqi from the Li family actually obtained it so easily. On the way here he felt that something was wrong. Not far away, Li Guangxing suddenly said, "Yes, this matter itself is fishy." Speaking up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something and he hurriedly said, "Maybe it was Yi Xian who did it. This chapter isn't finished, please continue. This person has a meticulous mind. Furthermore, he isn't a useless person. It's impossible for him to hand over this item so easily. Yet he handed it over so easily. There's definitely something fishy going on. I feel that he's the mastermind behind this. Perhaps he's here. Yi Xian is here?" Everyone glanced at the surroundings, but they didn't notice anything. Right at this moment, Lin Miaoyin suddenly said, "Let's not talk about that for now. Li Guangxing, you said that the treasure isn't on you. Do you dare to let me search you?" Li Guangxing spoke in a low voice, "Sure." Lin Miaoyin looked at Li Jinwu and the latter looked at Li Guangxing. Li Jinwu's gaze fell on a spatial ring on Li Guangxing's hand. He pointed at it and the spatial ring exploded. As soon as the ring exploded, a small black pagoda appeared in front of everyone. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they saw this black pagoda. Even Li Guangxing himself was petrified. "He's still here?" Li Guangxing's face was filled with disbelief. "This..." Li Jinwu's expression instantly became ferocious when he saw the black Xiao Ta. "Li Guangxing. You actually dared to play tricks on the old man. Die for the old man." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged over. Li Guangxing's expression instantly changed when he saw Li Jinwu suddenly attack. He wasn't a match for Li Jinwu at all, so he immediately turned around and ran towards Lin Yanqing. "Ancestor, save me." Meanwhile, Lin Yanqing suddenly vanished. He attacked. However, he didn't attack Li Jinwu but Li Guangxing. He was extremely swift, and Li Guangxing's head was smashed into pieces before Li Guangxing could even react. As soon as Li Guangxing's soul appeared, Lin Yanqing waved his right hand, and a strand of flames enveloped Li Guangxing's soul. H. Li Guangxing's miserable and shrill cries resounded incessantly from within the flames. It didn't take long for him to vanish completely. Everyone looked at Lin Yanqing. Lin Yanqing sent the World Prison Pagoda to Li Jinwu. "Elderly, this item originally belonged to the Myriad Dimension Academy. Now it shall be returned to its rightful owner." Li Jinwu glanced at Lin Yanqing, then he put the World Prison Pagoda away before turning around and leaving. Jun Wuyan and the others fell silent when they saw Li Jinwu leave. They knew that Li Jinwu had given up on destroying the capital. Needless to say, Lin Yanqing was very smart. If he didn't kill Li Guangxing, then the entire capital would be in danger. But he'd killed Li Guangxing himself, and it could be said to have calmed Li Jinwu's rage. Lin Yanqing glanced at Jun Wuyan and the others. "Everyone, this item has fallen into the hands of the Myriad Dimension Academy. If you want it, then go look for them." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Jun Wuyan and the others fell silent for a moment before leaving as well. Go look for the Myriad Dimension Academy? Naturally, they did not dare to look for him. This myriad-dimensional academy was not demonic city. Although the prophet was no longer around, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. This myriad-dimensional academy was still one of the top powers in the fifth dimension. In next to no time everyone dispersed. Down below in the capital, Li Nianxing suddenly stopped and said in a light voice, "I know you're in the shadows. This matter was caused by my Li clan's greed and my Li clan deserves it. My Li clan won't take revenge, so I hope you can be magnanimous and let my Li clan off." After a short moment the space behind Li Nianxing trembled slightly, but it quickly returned to normal. Li Nianxing slowly closed his eyes. "Thank you." End of this chapter. Chapter 863. Revenge. It wasn't that Li Nianxing hadn't thought about revenge, but he knew that he couldn't do it. He had already guessed that the person behind all of this was Zhou Xian. Because if the World Prison Pagoda was so easy to obtain, why would Myriad Dimension Academy return empty-handed and issue an arrest warrant? There was only one explanation for Zhou Xian handing it over so easily, and that was to divert the conflict. And Zhou Xian had succeeded. If he wanted to take revenge, then Li Guangxing wouldn't be the only one who would die, but the entire Shanghai. The Li family couldn't get involved in this mess. Li Nianxing sighed softly and walked down. At this moment he seemed to be getting older. Zhou Xian didn't stay in Shanghai. Instead he followed Li Jinwu from Myriad Dimension Academy in the dark. He knew that humans were greedy, and as long as they had greed he could use it. Zhou Xian followed him and the two of them got closer and closer to Myriad Dimension Academy. In the dark Zhou Xian looked at Li Jinwu with doubt in his eyes. Could this guy really be so selfless? Just at this moment Li Jinwu suddenly stopped. In the dark Zhou Xian stopped as well. He quietly looked at Li Jinwu who just stood there. After about 15 minutes, Li Jinwu opened his palm, and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda, Li Jinwu's eyes flashed with hesitation. Greed? He didn't have such thoughts. Because he knew that if he had such thoughts he would die without a complete corpse. His position in Myriad Dimension Academy wasn't low, but if he dared to covet this item, not only would he lose his current position, he would also die a horrible death. This treasure wasn't something someone with his strength could possess. However, he was still curious. After looking at the World Prison Pagoda for a long time, the hesitation in Li Jinwu's eyes turned into determination. In the end he chose not to think about the World Prison Pagoda. He knew that once a person opened the door to greed, it wouldn't be closed again. Thinking of this, Li Jinwu prepared to put away the World Prison Pagoda. However, at this moment the World Prison Pagoda suddenly trembled. Then the door to the first level of Xiao Ta's pagoda opened. Seeing this, Li Jinwu was stunned. The tower door opened? Could it be that the prison pagoda had acknowledged him? Thinking of this, Li Jinwu was a little excited, but he forced himself to calm down. At this time Xiao Ta slightly trembled as if he was trying to express something. Li Jinwu hesitated for a moment before asking softly, "You want to recognize me as your master?" Xiao Ta quickly nodded. Seeing this, Li Jinwu could not help but clench his fists. At this moment he was feeling extremely complicated. He never thought that Xiao Ta would want to recognize him as his master. Hesitation. He was very rational. He knew that once this Xiao Ta recognized him as his master he would become a traitor of Myriad Dimension Academy. At that time his enemies would spread throughout the entire fifth dimension. Could they have this tower? Reason told him that he couldn't accept it. However, on the contrary, this was also a great opportunity. This was a treasure left behind by a prophet. If he could obtain it he would definitely obtain great fortune. Hesitation. At this moment he was unprecedentedly conflicted. At this time the World Prison Pagoda suddenly trembled, and then lightly floated in front of him, lightly rubbing against his hand. It was very intimate. He could feel that this Xiao Ta was very eager to recognize him as his master. In the same place, Li Jinwu was silent for a very long time. Finally he slowly closed his eyes. About a quarter of an hour later he suddenly opened his eyes. He raised his head to look at the horizon and softly said, "In life we often need to gamble." With that he grabbed the World Prison Pagoda, turned around and disappeared into the boundless horizon. This direction was completely opposite to Myriad Dimension Academy. In the dark the corner of Zhou Xian's mouth slightly rose. He looked at the crystal ball in his hand. Just now he had used this crystal ball to record everything that had just happened. At this time, Lian Qian's voice suddenly resounded in his mind. You're really bad. Xian laughed. They're worse than me, aren't they? Lian Qian said, you still need to focus on increasing your strength. Xian nodded. I know. As he said this, he seemed to have thought of something and immediately asked, Miss Lian Qian, how are the realms in the fifth dimension divided? Or is it the same as the fourth dimension? Lian Qian said, of course it's different. The realms in the fifth dimension are a bit more complicated than the realms in the fourth dimension. Xian said, Miss Lian Qian, please enlighten me. Lian Qian softly said, at the beginning of heaven and earth, all living things were born. Vitality began to sprout, establishing the universe, awakening the yin and yang, distributing vitality, giving birth to harmony. This is how humans are. Humans have 8 extraordinary meridians which are born in the body. The number of meridians is innumerable. They harmonize the center, which is the source of spirit. Those who are capable can comprehend the order of the 4 seasons of heaven and earth, learn the breathing method of the 8 extraordinary meridians, close their eyes and enter the path of cultivation. They can see the location of their body and soul, which is as small as a grain in the sky, but as bright as the universe. Only then can they cleanse their heart and change their marrow. Speaking up to this point, she slightly paused, then continued, the realms here are related to the 8 extraordinary meridians of a person. I won't tell you about the lower realms. The primordial realm, establishing the universe, awakening the yin and yang, understanding life and death, breaking through the mysteries of heaven, understanding karma, and entering the cycle of reincarnation. Your realm in the fourth dimension is the life-breaking realm. Here, in terms of battle strength, it's equivalent to this world's cosmos realm. Strictly speaking, it's not even that. Of course, your battle strength has at least reached the yin-yang realm. After a moment of silence, Xian asked, what does establishing the universe mean? Lian Qian said, Qian is the sky and Kun is the earth. Qian Kun refers to heaven and earth. Establishing the universe means that you have a certain understanding of heaven and earth. For example, you know how spiritual qi is formed, how space is formed, and the nature of all living things. You're equivalent to a cosmos realm now. However, you're a swordsman, and a swordsman who has broken through to the next realm. In addition, you have the executing heaven sword, the soul-suppressing sword, the special bloodline, and your body. Therefore, your battle strength is not lower than a yin-yang realm expert. However, if you meet a life and death realm expert, you're no match for him. Xian asked, what realm is Qintian? Lian Qian said, at least heaven's secret. After a moment of silence, Xian asked again, what about the woman in the plain dress? The woman in the plain dress. Lian Qian was silent. Xian asked, what's wrong? Lian Qian said softly, she can even sever karma. Therefore she's at least. No, she can't be measured by realm. She's not within the rules. So, please don't ask me such stupid questions next time. Otherwise I'll hit you. Xian was speechless. Lian Qian continued, you have to remember that one's cultivation level isn't everything. Take you for example. You're very deceptive because your cultivation level is low, but your battle prowess is high. Of course, it's because of your bloodline and that set of godly equipment you have. Xian nodded. Zhou Xian nodded. I understand. Lian Qian continued, other than that there are some special professions such as those spell masters and some talisman masters. In short, don't underestimate anyone. Underestimate? Xian shook his head. How could he dare to underestimate others? Unbeknownst to him, people often died because they underestimated their enemies. Without thinking too much, Xian turned around and left. This matter wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just the beginning. The current him couldn't face these experts from the fifth dimension head-on. Myriad Dimensional Academy. Myriad Dimensional Academy was built on a cliff that was tens of thousands of meters high. This cliff was the famous ocean cliff of the fifth dimension. It was also the place where the Prophet established Myriad Dimensional Academy. There were countless worldwide academies, but there was only one Myriad Dimensional Academy, and that was this place. This place could be said to be the holy land in the hearts of countless worldwide academy students. Somewhere in the library, Qintian was sitting quietly. In his hand was an ancient book. At this time, an old man quietly appeared not far from Qintian. The old man said softly, entering the martial realm disappeared. Can be confirmed. After a moment of silence, Qintian said softly, greed. The old man said softly, yes, I shouldn't have let him go. I should have gone myself. Qin Tian shook his head. Entering the martial realm has followed you for so many years. You should be very clear about his personality. He isn't the kind of person who can't resist temptation. There's something fishy about this matter. The old man nodded. That Yi Xian handed over the world prison pagoda so easily. This matter is extremely strange. According to my investigation, although this person is a swordsman, he is very cunning and often uses despicable methods. This time he must be playing some kind of trick. After saying this, he paused and said, if I'm not wrong, he might have already arrived in the 5th dimension. Qin Tian smiled. This person is quite scheming. Interesting. The old man said in a deep voice, what should we do now? Qin Tian said softly, find Jin Wu. Of course, find him secretly. Don't let others know that he has already left my 10,000 Dimensions Academy with the World Prison Pagoda. The old man nodded. If others knew that Li Jinwu had escaped with the World Prison Pagoda, needless to say, there would definitely be countless people looking for Li Jinwu. At that time, the matter would become even more chaotic. The old man turned around and left. Qin Tian stood up and looked in front of him. There was a portrait in front of him. It was the portrait of the plain-clothed woman. Qin Tian looked at the portrait of the plain-clothed woman and said with a smile, don't you like to play chess? Then I'll accompany you. This Yi Xian's life is mine. No one can protect him. Qingshan City. This was a small city that didn't belong to any faction. On this day, a man came to the small city. This man was Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked around. There weren't many people in the city. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that he found that there was no difference between the people here and the people in the 4th dimension. Yi Xian came to the center of the city. This place was quite bustling. There were many people and they were all cultivators. Yi Xian opened his palm and a crystal ball flew out from his hand. The crystal ball flew into the air and in next to no time, a scene appeared on the battlefield. It was the scene of Li Jinwu fleeing with the World Prison Pagoda. There was even sound and it was exactly the same. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the scene revealed by the crystal ball. Yi Xian smiled and turned around to leave. At this moment he suddenly frowned. Beside him, a sharp gaze was staring at him. P.S. Your monthly votes are mine. Chapter 864. Yi Xian turned around and saw a man standing not far away. It was a woman. However, she was dressed as a man. The woman had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. Her gaze was as sharp as a blade, giving off an invisible pressure. Yi Xian ignored her and turned to leave. In the distance, the woman's lips curled up. Interesting. After saying that, she followed him. Yi Xian left the town. He had achieved his goal. He knew that it wouldn't be long before many people in the 5th dimension knew that Li Jinwu had escaped with the treasure. As a result, there would definitely be countless people looking for Li Jinwu. As long as there were people looking for Li Jinwu, his goal would be achieved. After Yi Xian left the small town, he walked towards the deep mountains in the distance. The woman followed behind him. She was brazenly following him. After entering the mountains, Yi Xian stopped. Behind him, the woman smiled. This place is not bad. It's a good place to kill. Yi Xian turned to look at the woman. You are. The woman smiled. Xiahou Jin. Yi Xian said, why do you keep following me? The woman sized up Yi Xian and smiled. How should I address you? Yi Xian said, why do you keep following me? The woman stopped not far from Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You are Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned. He was shocked. The person in front of him knew his true identity. Who was this person? Without thinking too much, Yi Xian clenched his right hand. He was filled with killing intent. Xiahou Jin smiled. Young master Yi wants to kill me to silence me? Yi Xian was silent. Xiahou Jin smiled. Young master Yi, since I dared to follow you, do you think I would be afraid of you killing me? Of course, let me state that I have nothing to do with the Worldwide Academy. Moreover, I'm not young master Ye's enemy. How did you know my identity? Yi Xian asked softly. This was what he was most curious about. Xiahou Jin said with a smile. I also have some understanding of Li Yunqi from the Li family. Among the younger generation of the Li family, he is considered a well-known figure. However, in my opinion, he still doesn't have the ability to obtain the 5th dimensional treasure. And he got it, and he even got it so easily. There's only one explanation, and that's young master Yi gave it to him on purpose. Yi Xian said, how can you be so sure? Xiahou Jin smiled and said, because I've investigated young Master Yi. Young Master Yi had come this far from being an unpopular disciple of a small family. How could he be an ordinary person? Moreover, according to my investigation, young Master Yi's strength should far surpass that of Li Yunqi and the rest. Moreover, young Master Yi isn't the kind of person who's afraid of death. Therefore, young Master Yi took the initiative to hand over this item. It's obvious that he wants to shift the conflict. Young Master Yi is protecting himself and also protecting the four-dimensional universe. Yi Xian was silent. Xiahou Jin continued. Now young Master Yi has played the worldwide academy in the palm of his hand through this pagoda. I have to say young Master Yi is really amazing. If my guess is correct, the fifth-dimensional treasure has already recognized young Master Yi as its master. Because without its cooperation, it's impossible for young Master Yi to use it. Yi Xian was still silent. However, a ray of sword light had already appeared in his palm. He wasn't a merciful person. If he met someone who deserved to be killed, he definitely wouldn't be lenient. Xiahou Jin smiled and said, young Master Yi, let me give you a piece of advice. Do you want to hear it? Yi Xian said, speak. Xiahou Jin said, these plans of yours are very good and they've all succeeded. However, those big shots must have already seen through your schemes. And they, including the Worldwide Academy, must have already guessed that you're the mastermind behind all this. Yi Xian smiled and said, and then? Xiahou Jin was about to speak, but suddenly she seemed to have thought of something. She glanced at Yi Xian and said, this isn't a conspiracy at all, it's an open conspiracy. As long as they want that treasure, as long as they're greedy, they'll fall into your trap. Yi Xian glanced at Xiahou Jin and didn't say anything. Xiahou Jin looked at Yi Xian and said, young Master Yi, you're playing with fire. Yi Xian said softly, Miss Xiahou, if I'm not wrong, you and I didn't meet by chance. You came to find me on purpose, right? Xiahou Jin smiled and said, yes. Yi Xian said, Miss Xiahou, if there's anything you want to say, just say it. As you know, I'm a little busy right now. Xiahou Jin smiled slightly and said, young Master Yi, I want to make a deal with you. Yi Xian nodded and said, tell me about it. Xiahou Jin looked at Yi Xian and said, we want to borrow the Tao laws of sealing in this pagoda. Tao laws of sealing. Lianqian. Yi Xian said, you want to borrow the Tao laws of sealing? Xiahou Jin nodded and said, yes. Yi Xian said, what can I get in return? Xiahou Jin smiled and said, you'll get an ally. Yi Xian shook his head and said, give me something practical. Ally? He didn't believe her. Some people could share riches, but they couldn't share hardships. Moreover, he completely believed that this person in front of him and the people behind him wouldn't become enemies with the Worldwide Academy because of him. Therefore, it was better to give him some practical benefits. Xiahou Jin smiled and said, how about this? 2 purple talismans. Purple talismans. Yi Xian was about to speak when Lian Qian suddenly said, ask her for an orange talisman. Yi Xian looked at Xiahou Jin and said, I want an orange talisman. Xiahou Jin shook her head and said, young Master Yi, we're just borrowing your Tao laws of sealing, not asking for them. Aren't you asking for too much? Yi Xian turned around and left. At this moment, Xiahou Jin suddenly said, young Master Yi, I think the Worldwide Academy would be very interested in your whereabouts. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth. Xiahou Jin frowned slightly and looked around. However, she didn't find Yi Xian. Yi Xian disappeared? Xiahou Jin used her divine sense to sweep the surroundings once more, but she still didn't find Yi Xian. Right at this moment, a strand of sword light suddenly appeared behind Xiahou Jin. Xiahou Jin's eyes narrowed slightly, and then she forcefully flashed over 30 m to the right. However, one of her arms had flown off. However, the space she was in had exploded apart, and the force of the explosion caused Yi Xian to retreat repeatedly. In the distance, Xiahou Jin, who'd lost an arm, gazed at Yi Xian. She was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly vanished, and a strand of sword light instantly appeared in front of her. Xiahou Jin's eyes narrowed slightly when she saw this scene. She tapped the tip of her foot lightly and a green light flashed beneath her feet. When Yi Xian's sword arrived before her, she'd vanished. Yi Xian's sword stabbed air and he immediately turned invisible. Both of them had vanished. But right at this moment, the space in the surroundings suddenly trembled, and Xiahou Jin's expression changed drastically. Spatial Dao Law. She'd just finished speaking when the space in front of her split apart, and then a strand of sword light stabbed out. What a swift sword strike! Xiaojin was shocked. She suddenly pushed her fair hand forward, and a violet talisman appeared at the center of her palm. There was a huge word inscribed on the talisman: Defend. At the instant that Yi Xian's sword stabbed over, the word Defend suddenly transformed into a shield of light that blocked in front of her. Bang! Along with an explosion, the shield of light exploded apart and Xiaojin was blasted back. Xiaojin was shocked when she saw this scene. She hadn't expected that a single strike of Yi Xian's sword would actually destroy her defensive violet talisman. Yi Xian's sword. Xiaojin's expression became extremely solemn as she gazed at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. The sword in Yi Xian's hand wasn't an ordinary sword at all. Xiaojin hurriedly said when she saw that Yi Xian was about to attack again, "Young Master Yi, my words were rude just now. Young Master Yi, please forgive me." However, Yi Xian didn't hold back. This time Xiaojin didn't dodge. When Yi Xian's sword was still 1.5 m away from her, she suddenly said, "I'll give you the orange talisman." Yi Xian's sword stopped moving and he looked at Xiaojin. "Give it to me." Xiaojin said in a low voice, "It's not on me." As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Xian's sword stabbed half an inch into the space between her brows. Meanwhile, Xiaojin suddenly said, "I can give it to you." Yi Xian put his sword away and glanced coldly at Xiaojin. "Are you trying to paint a picture for me?" Xiaojin said in a low voice, "I mean what I say." At this point she looked at Yi Xian. "We have no intention of becoming enemies with you. We just want to cooperate with you. Believe me, if we cooperate it will be very beneficial to you." Yi Xian looked at Xiaojin. "Cooperation is fine, but I don't like it when others threaten me." Xiaojin nodded. "I understand." At this moment she realized that she had seriously underestimated Yi Xian's strength. Yi Xian was much stronger than what she had investigated, at least a few times stronger. Xiaojin said softly, "Brother Yi, follow me." Yi Xian glanced at Xiaojin and said in his heart, "Miss Lianqian, is it worth the risk?" Lianqian said, "An orange talisman is completely worth it. Moreover, you have the immeasurable sword. If things go south, you can leave at any time." Yi Xian nodded slightly and followed her. On the way, Xiaojin suddenly smiled and said, "Brother Yi, may I ask if the treasure of the fifth dimension has really recognized you as its master?" Yi Xian said, "Miss Xiao, we are only cooperating, right?" Xiaojin nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Then don't ask so much. Also, I want to obtain that orange talisman first." Xiaojin was silent for a moment before nodding. "Sure." Not long after, the two of them arrived in front of an ancient city. The city walls were covered with all kinds of mysterious runes. In addition, there was a huge rune in the sky above the city. The entire city looked extremely eerie. Seeing this city, Yi Xian frowned slightly. What was this place? Yi Xian looked at Xiaojin. "What do you want me to do?" Xiaojin said, "I hope that Brother Yi can help us remove a seal." Yi Xian asked again, "What seal?" Xiaojin smiled. "Brother Yi will know when the time comes." With that, she quickened her pace. Yi Xian glanced at Xiaojin before following her. At this moment, Lianqian suddenly said, "This place is a bit strange. Be careful." Yi Xian nodded. He suddenly stopped. At this moment, Xiaojin turned to look at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi?" Yi Xian said, "Miss Xiao, I want that orange talisman." Xiaojin looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. At this moment, several powerful auras suddenly appeared on the scene. Yi Xian opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. "I can't stop once I start killing." Chapter 865. Xiaojin, who stood across from Yi Xian, glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. "I told you we have no ill intent towards young Master Yi." She turned to look to her right as she spoke. "Grandfather, I've already promised to give him an orange talisman, and he'll help us remove the seal." Meanwhile, an old man walked over from the right. The old man walked over and stood over 10 m away from Yi Xian. "Remove the seal first." Yi Xian shrugged, turned around and left. The old man frowned slightly when he saw this, and he was about to attack when Xiaojin suddenly shook her head. The old man fell silent for a moment, and then he flicked his finger, causing an orange talisman to appear in front of Yi Xian. An orange talisman. Yi Xian glanced at the talisman in front of him. Senior, what talisman is this? Xianxia replied, I'll study it for you. Even Senior doesn't know? It's not like I know everything. Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the old man in front of Xian spoke abruptly, I wonder if you're able to make a move now? Xian looked at the old man and nodded, take me there. The old man turned around and left. Xian followed, and it didn't take long for the three of them to arrive before an old well. Xian glanced at the mouth of the well. The mouth of the well was covered in black talisman markings, and there were 4 pitch-black iron chains around the mouth of the well. The iron chains were thick like pillars and they sunk into the mouth of the well. Xian frowned slightly. What's this? The old man glanced at Xian. There's an extremely powerful seal within the mouth of the well. You just have to remove the seal and everything else has nothing to do with you. Xian glanced at the mouth of the well, and he could faintly hear roars coming from within. Xian said in his heart, Miss Xianxia, can you remove the seal? Xianxia replied, there's no seal in this world that I can't remove. Once the seal is undone, leave quickly. Xian asked, why? Xianxia said, the aura in this dry well is very strong and very evil. It's definitely not a good person. Once the seal is lifted, you should leave immediately. Don't get involved in these troublesome matters. Xian nodded. I understand. Senior, make your move. As soon as he finished speaking, the space between his eyebrows suddenly split open. Immediately after, a ray of white light suddenly surged out from between his eyebrows. This ray of white light instantly entered the dry well. When this white light entered the dry well, the black runes around the dry well actually began to dim. At the same time, the chains began to shake violently. The old man's expression instantly became slightly excited when he saw this. A moment later, the black runes around the dry well suddenly disappeared. Boom! A powerful aura surged out from the well and into the sky. Xianxia's voice suddenly sounded in Xian's mind, retreat. Without any hesitation, Xian turned around and ran. He was extremely fast and in the blink of an eye he disappeared into the horizon. At the moment when Xian disappeared, a man floated out from the dry well. The man's entire body was blood red, and in his hands there were 2 blood-red spheres floating. When he saw this person, the old man hurriedly knelt down on one knee. Xiahou family's 107th generation descendant, Xiahou Wu, greets the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor looked at the horizon and said softly, what a special bloodline. As he spoke, he looked at Xiahou Wu, who was in front of him. Who was that person just now? The Blood Emperor said in a deep voice, Yi Xian. The Blood Emperor slowly closed his eyes. I want the power of his bloodline to find him. Hearing this, Xiahou Wu hesitated for a moment before he said, this Yi Xian is not simple. He's very complicated, the Blood Emperor suddenly said, I'll take care of everything. Xiahou Wu didn't say anything else. He immediately nodded and left with Xiahou Jin. At this moment, the Blood Emperor said, your Xiahou family has protected me for many years. Now that I've come into being, the Xiahou family will naturally receive benefits. As he spoke, he waved his right hand and numerous spatial rings fell in front of Xiahou Wu. Xiahou Wu glanced at them and he was wild with joy. He hurriedly knelt down on one knee again. My Xiahou family is willing to go through fire and water for the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor nodded slightly. Find that person just now. Xiahou Wu hurriedly said, understood. After he spoke, he left with Xiahou Jin. After the two of them left, the Blood Emperor looked at the horizon again. What a pity. I shouldn't have hesitated just now. On the other side, Xiahou Jin said in a deep voice, Father, if we go find trouble with Yi Xian, it means that we'll be embroiled in the current dispute. Xiahou Wu said softly, there's no other way. We only have one way out now, and that is to cling tightly to the Blood Emperor. Xiahou Jin still wanted to say something, but Xiahou Wu suddenly said, leave the Xiahou family. Xiahou Jin looked at Xiahou Wu. Xiahou Wu said softly, my Xiahou family has no choice but to be embroiled in this dispute, but you can't. Leave the Xiahou family. Do you understand what I mean? Xiahou Jin was silent. Xiahou Wu looked at Xiahou Jin. When I saw that Yi Xian just now, I knew that he wasn't simple. He was able to make the tower recognize him as its master, and he could even subdue the law of the tower. This person is unfathomable. However, I don't regret releasing the Blood Emperor's seal because to our Xiahou family, this is also an opportunity. Xiahou Jin nodded slightly. I know. Xiahou Wu said, the world prison tower has reappeared in the five-dimensional universe. This means that the prophet may reappear in the world. The prophet. Hearing this, Xiahou Jin's expression became solemn. Although she wasn't from the same era as the prophet, she had heard of the legends of the prophet. In the past, the prophet was in the five-dimensional universe. At that time, there was order and justice in the five-dimensional universe, but now, everything was based on strength. Whoever's fist was bigger was the one who made the right. Xiahou Jin shook her head then said, Father, take care. After saying this, she turned and left. She knew that she was a trump card left by the Xiahou family. If the Xiahou family won, it would naturally be good. But if the Xiahou family lost, then she was the hope for the Xiahou family to make a comeback. Seeing Xiahou Jin disappear at the end of the road, Xiahou Wu also turned and left. On the other side, after Yi Xian left the Xiahou family, he found a place to hide, then took out the orange-colored talisman. Miss Lian Qian, what type of talisman is this? Lian Qian said, a strength talisman, try it. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. How do I activate it? Lian Qian said, it's very simple. Enter it with your divine sense and control the talisman. Then activate it, you can borrow the power of the talisman. Hearing this, Yi Xian did as he was told. Very quickly, the strength talisman in his hand suddenly turned into a ray of light and entered his arm. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the clothes on Yi Xian's arm were directly turned to ash. Yi Xian suddenly clenched his fist. At this moment he felt that his arm contained boundless power. This power was so strong that it had already surpassed the strength of his physical body. This was the first time that Yi Xian had seen the power of this talisman, and he had to admit that it was truly powerful. At this moment he felt that he could kill a fate-breaker expert with a single punch. Invincible confidence. Lian Qian suddenly said, this talisman is only a low-grade orange talisman. If it was a high-grade orange talisman or a top-grade orange talisman, then it would be even more terrifying. Yi Xian nodded. It's indeed powerful. However, it's still an external object in the end. It's not my own strength, so I can't rely too much on it. Lian Qian smiled. It's good that you think that way. Yi Xian put the talisman away, and then he looked at the horizon and said softly, it's time to go see that elderly from Myriad Dimension Academy. After saying that, he disappeared. Because of the crystal ball that Yi Xian had placed in the city, he wasn't the only one looking for Li Jinwu. Many other powers were also looking for Li Jinwu. Now, everyone knew that the World Prison Pagoda was in Li Jinwu's hands. Moreover, Li Jinwu hadn't returned to the Worldwide Academy, but had instead escaped with the treasure. Simply put, whoever found Li Jinwu, the treasure would belong to that person. Because of the World Prison Pagoda, Yi Xian was able to easily find Li Jinwu. At this moment, Li Jinwu was hiding in a cave. His aura was completely concealed and he had concealed himself extremely well. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had entered the realm of emptiness. Therefore, even though he was very close to Li Jinwu couldn't discover him. Inside the cave, Li Jinwu held the World Prison Pagoda in his hands. He seemed to have gone mad and his eyes were filled with undisguised excitement. The treasure of the fifth dimension. The treasure of the prophet. Li Jinwu held the World Prison Pagoda. I must control this pagoda. As he spoke, he pointed with his finger and a drop of blood essence entered the World Prison Pagoda. The World Prison Pagoda slightly trembled as if in response. Seeing this, Li Jinwu became excited. At this moment, a powerful aura assaulted him from outside the cave. Yi Xian looked outside the cave. He was somewhat astonished. He hadn't expected that someone would be able to find Li Jinwu so quickly. He had wanted to warn the powers of the fifth dimension. Inside the cave, Li Jinwu immediately put away the World Prison Pagoda and looked outside the cave. At this moment, the cave door in front of him exploded. No, it should be said that the place he was hiding in had exploded. Li Jinwu looked in front of him. Not far away from him stood a black-clothed man. The black-clothed man's entire body was shrouded in black, and there was a mysterious power enveloping his body. It was impossible to see his true appearance. Li Jinwu stared at the black-clothed man. Your Excellency, could it be that you don't know that I'm an elder of the Worldwide Academy? In the distance, the black-clothed man sneered. Worldwide Academy? Li Jinwu, you secretly took the treasure of the Worldwide Academy and fled. You actually dare to call yourself an elder of the Worldwide Academy? You really have a lot of face. Hearing this, Li Jinwu frowned. How did you know? The black-clothed man laughed. How did I know? Right now everyone in the world knows. Li Jinwu, the old man will give you a chance. Hand over the pagoda and the old man will spare your life. Otherwise. At this moment, Li Jinwu suddenly turned around and fled. He didn't choose to attack because if he did, he might attract even more experts. Right now he only had one choice and that was to flee. However, he hadn't even taken a few steps when another old man appeared in front of him. Li Jinwu was just about to speak when the old man suddenly spread out his right hand and pressed it down lightly. Bang! The space where Li Jinwu was directly collapsed. As for Li Jinwu, his soul was completely destroyed. He had been instantly killed. In the darkness, Zhou Xian was silent. He knew that a true big shot had appeared. Chapter 866. At this moment, Zhou Xian knew that he had underestimated the position of the treasure in the hearts of the people of the fifth dimension. This time a super big shot had appeared. Zhou Xian looked at the old man in the distance. The old man was wearing a plain robe. From his appearance, it was impossible to tell that he was a super expert. The old man opened his palm and the world prison pagoda landed in his hand. He looked at the pagoda and said softly, "How can a weak person possess such a divine object?" As he said this, he looked at the black-clothed man. The latter did not say anything and quietly retreated. In the dark, Zhou Xian said softly in his heart, "Miss Lianqian, what realm is this person?" Lianqian said softly, "This person was able to destroy Li Jinwu's soul with a wave of his hand. Not only did he destroy his soul, he even erased his life imprint. To be able to do this, he is at least in the life and death realm." Life and death realm. Zhou Xian was silent. He knew that there would be even more powerful people coming out. As expected, just as the black-clothed man disappeared, a powerful aura suddenly attacked from the horizon. The old man looked at the horizon and said softly, "Yuan Mutsong." Just as he said this, a white-clothed old man suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was Myriad Dimension Academy's teacher, Yuan Mutsong. This person could be said to be the third in command of Myriad Dimension Academy, because he was in charge of the entire Wuyuan. Myriad Dimension Academy was divided into civil and military, and he was the head of Wuyuan. However, this old man did not have a hint of fear in his eyes. Yuan Mutsong looked at the old man in front of him. "My Myriad Dimension Academy and Qi family have never become enemies." The old man smiled. "We have never thought of becoming enemies with Myriad Dimension Academy." Yuan Mutsong looked at the old man. "Then please return my Myriad Dimension Academy's treasure." The old man laughed. "Yuan Mutsong, you said that this world prison pagoda belongs to your Myriad Dimension Academy?" Yuan Mutsong asked in reply, "Is it not?" The old man smiled. "As far as I know, this object belongs to the Prophet, not your Myriad Dimension Academy. Now that the Prophet has disappeared, this object should be ownerless. What makes you say that it belongs to your Myriad Dimension Academy?" Yuan Mutsong looked at the old man and did not speak. The old man continued, "If the Prophet is still here, my Qi clan will definitely offer this item to you. If it's someone else, then my Qi family would be embarrassed." The Qi family. In the fifth dimension there were some extremely powerful aristocratic families. The Qi family was one of them. Moreover, the Qi family was not an ordinary family. That was because there was a rune master in the Qi clan. Moreover, he was a powerful rune master, the kind that could refine orange talismans. This kind of person had too much influence. Of course, if that was all, the Myriad Dimension Academy wouldn't need to be afraid. More importantly, this rune master of the Qi clan was an elder of Fu Wenzong. The Myriad Dimension Academy did not dare to underestimate such a power. If it was when the Prophet was still here, the Myriad Dimension Academy would not be afraid of this Fu Wenzong. That was because the founder of Fu Wenzong had knelt in front of the Myriad Dimension Academy's cliff for 10 days and 10 nights in order to learn the rune Dao of the Prophet. Strictly speaking, the founder of Fu Wenzong was the disciple of the Prophet. Although the Prophet did not acknowledge him, the founder of Fu Wenzong had always called himself the Prophet's disciple. Currently, the relationship between the Myriad Dimension Academy and Fu Wenzong was not very good. Yuan Mutsong weighed his options and did not directly attack. He said softly, "Qi Wu, with your intelligence, you should know that someone is deliberately stirring up trouble in the dark." Qi Wu nodded. "I know. However, my Qi clan does not care because the person behind this is targeting your worldwide academy. Yuan Muzong looked at Qi Wu. If you take this object, it won't just be targeting my myriad dimension academy. Qi Wu smiled. This object is worth my Qi clan risking our lives for. Yuan Muzong nodded. Then I won't say any more. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Qi Wu grinned. It just so happens that I want to experience the strength of the master of Wuyun as well. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out as well. The battle began. In the shadows, Yi Xian watched silently. It had to be said that these two people were very powerful. Moreover, the power of this world was indeed very different from that of the four-dimensional universe. For example, the use of space here was not something that the experts of the four-dimensional universe could compare with. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that the space in the five-dimensional universe was extremely firm. If they were below, then this space would have probably collapsed a long time ago. However, at this moment, the strength of these two people had actually not destroyed the space here. The battle between the two of them was growing more and more intense, and Yi Xian had already retreated to the side. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head, and a palm-sized orange talisman had suddenly appeared in the sky. Along with the appearance of this orange talisman, a bolt of lightning shot down from the talisman at an extremely swift speed, and it arrived above Yuan Muzong in the blink of an eye. Yuan Muzong's expression changed slightly, and he clenched his right hand into a fist before smashing it upwards. Bang! The glow of lightning exploded while he retreated repeatedly. However, right at this moment, numerous bolts of lightning descended incessantly from the talisman in the sky. Bang! 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 Yuan Muzong retreated madly. On the other side, Yi Xian was slightly shocked. The might of this orange talisman is actually so great? Lian Qian said, it's at least a high-grade orange talisman. A top-grade orange talisman would be even more powerful. However, the truly formidable thing is actually the seven-colored talisman. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. A seven-colored talisman? Isn't it a black talisman? Lian Qian said, it's a black talisman now because only Master was able to draw a seven-colored talisman all those years ago. When Fu Wenzong created the talisman, he knelt before Master's cliff for 10 days and 10 nights in order to obtain a seven-colored talisman to study. Actually, that person wasn't bad and Master was quite satisfied with him. However, he still made him kneel for 10 days and 10 nights. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? Lian Qian said softly, because Master said that the easier it is to obtain something, the less one would cherish it. Yi Xian was silent. He had to admit that the prophet's words were reasonable. Some things the easier it was to obtain, the less one would cherish it. Lian Qian said again, after Master, only Fu Wenzong could barely draw a seven-colored talisman. However, I'm afraid that he is no longer in this world. I think that in this fifth dimension, there shouldn't be anyone who can draw a seven-colored talisman. Yi Xian said, Miss Lian Qian, did Senior Prophet leave any treasures in this world? Lian Qian said, the Universal Library is the best treasure that Master left behind. However, you can't go there because the Universal Library is inside the Universal Academy. If you go there, you'll be walking into a trap. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. At this time, Lian Qian said, there's another place. At that time you can go and try your luck. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this time, an orange talisman suddenly appeared in the distant sky. From this talisman, fire dragons swooped down. Below, Yuan Muzong's expression changed greatly. However, he suddenly opened his palm, and a purple talisman appeared in his hand. In the next moment, a huge golden square shield suddenly appeared above his head, and at this moment the fire dragons and lightning directly collided with the golden square shield. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The golden square shield began to tremble violently. Soon, many cracks appeared on the golden square shield. Obviously, it couldn't hold on much longer. Yi Xian looked up. In the sky there stood an old man. On the left side of the old man's chest, there was a small, talisman character. Obviously this was Fu Wenzong's. At this time the golden square shield suddenly exploded, and a fire dragon directly collided with Yuan Muzong's body. Boom! Yuan Muzong was directly sent flying. In the sky the old man looked down at Qi Wu. Let's go. Qi Wu said solemnly, Uncle, since we have already shed all pretense of cordiality with the Myriad Dimension Academy, why not directly kill them? The old man said coldly, Fool. Take that thing and leave. Don't return to the Qi clan, go to Fu Wenzong. Qi Wu was somewhat puzzled. Why? The old man looked coldly at Qi Wu. Are you trying to kill the Qi clan? This thing is not something the Qi clan can possess. Take it to Fu Wenzong. Qi Wu hesitated for a moment then nodded, all right. With that he turned and disappeared at the end of the horizon. Not far away Yuan Mutsong looked at the old man in the sky. Qi Fu, it seems that your Qi clan wants to become enemies with my worldwide academy. With that he smiled sinisterly, your Qi clan really wants to disappear from this world. Qi Fu was expressionless. Do you think that this old man is afraid? If your worldwide academy wants it then come to Fu Wenzong. As soon as he finished speaking he turned around and left. Fu Wenzong. Yuan Mutsong's expression was unsightly to the extreme. He seemed to have thought of something. Suddenly he glanced at the surroundings. Yi Xian, I know you're hiding in the shadows. Let the old man tell you. Suddenly, a ray of light flew out from the space in front of Yuan Mutsong. The latter's expression changed drastically, and he was just about to move when a mysterious force suddenly appeared around him. Moreover, a blood-red prisoner character had appeared above him as well, and then two powerful forces suppressed him. It was exactly this suppression that allowed Yi Xian's sword to pierce through his throat. Yuan Mutsong's head flew into the air, but his soul wasn't annihilated. However, a sword appeared above him as soon as his soul appeared, and then his soul was absorbed by the sword in the next moment. The soul-quelling sword. After it absorbed Yuan Mutsong's soul, the soul-quelling sword trembled violently, and a powerful force instantly swept towards the surroundings. Yi Xian gazed at the soul-quelling sword that stood before him. It's growing stronger and stronger. The soul-quelling sword was different from the executing heaven's sword because it could be said to have been slowly raised by him. Now the soul-quelling sword's strength could be said to be on par with the executing heaven's sword. Of course that was only in terms of the soul. If it was in terms of physical strength, then the executing heaven's sword was still the strongest. Yi Xian gestured with his right hand, and one of Yuan Mutsong's spatial rings instantly flew into his grasp. He gazed silently at the spot where Yuan Mutsong had vanished. Meanwhile Lian Qian suddenly said, I never expected that you would be able to kill him. Even though he was injured, but, Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Lian Qian, you're wrong. I didn't kill him, it was Qi Fu. Lian Qian fell silent for a moment before she spoke softly, you're too sly. Chapter 867. Before this, Qi Fu actually had the ability to kill Yuan Mutsong. However, Qi Fu did not kill him. Yi Xian knew that Yuan Mutsong did not want to go too far. After all, if Yuan Mutsong was killed, it meant that there would be no room for reconciliation between the Qi family and the Worldwide Academy. Therefore, Qi Fu did not choose to kill Yuan Mutsong. There were two reasons why Yi Xian took action. First, the Myriad Dimensions Academy was his enemy. Second, he wanted to make the fifth dimension even more chaotic. If it was not chaotic, these people might join hands to deal with him. What he wanted to do now was to make these forces kill each other. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at the storage ring in his hand. Inside the storage ring was a purple talisman. It was the defensive purple talisman from before. In addition, there were also some fist-sized crystals. Lian Qian suddenly said, crystals. These crystals are not very useful to you because your spring of life is more than 10 times better than these. Yi Xian nodded, indeed. As he spoke, he looked at the purple talisman in his hand. It was a defensive purple talisman. Although it was not bad, he did not like it anymore. Right now he was only interested in the orange talisman. Yi Xian put away the talisman, turned around and disappeared. Myriad Dimensions Academy. The moment Yuan Mutsong died, Qin Tian, who was sitting and reading in the library, suddenly stopped. Qin Tian was silent for a moment, then softly said, is he dead? At this moment an old man suddenly appeared beside him. The old man nodded. It is confirmed that he has died. Qin Tian said, who did it? The old man said, it might be Qi family's Qi Fu. Qin Tian frowned. Then the rune master? The old man nodded. It might be him. We can confirm that the treasure has fallen into the hands of Qi family, and Qi family has already taken it to Fu Wenzong. Fu Wenzong. Qin Tian chuckled. Interesting. Someone wants our Myriad Dimension Academy to fight to the death with Fu Wenzong. The old man said in a deep voice, Manor Head, this isn't a conspiracy, it's an open conspiracy. Now that the treasure has fallen into Fu Wenzong's hands, if we don't get it back once they take control of the tower we... Hearing this, Qin Tian fell silent. The old man continued, think about it in the worst-case scenario. Although the myriad dimension book house is in our hands, if they ally with other forces, our situation will become extremely terrible. Qin Tian slowly closed his eyes. Look for Yi Xian. The old man looked at Qin Tian. Qin Tian said softly, Su Yi, you have to understand that if you do not deal with this person, there will be endless trouble. You had to find this person first. As for the World Prison Pagoda, as long as the myriad dimensional book house is in our hands, even if they have the key they will still have to beg us. Our top priority right now is to find Yi Xian. Only by ending him can we get rid of the root of the problem. Otherwise, even if we get rid of Fu Wenzong, there will still be another sect. Su Yi said in a deep voice, but how do we find him? This person is extremely good at hiding. If he doesn't show himself, we won't be able to do anything to him. Qin Tian chuckled. Why did he come to the fifth dimension? Because he wants to bring the battle to the fifth dimension and doesn't want to implicate the fourth dimension. So, there is only one way to get him to show himself, and that is to target the fourth dimension. As long as we target the fourth dimension, he will definitely show himself. Hearing this, the old man nodded. I understand. After saying this, he seemed to have thought of something and said, the fourth dimension is currently sealed. Yin-Yang realm experts can't go down, and those below Yin-Yang realm are probably not Yi Xian's match. Qin Tian pointed with his finger and a mirror appeared in front of the old man. Seeing this mirror, Su Ye's expression became solemn. Is there a need to use such a godly item to deal with him? Universal Dimensional Mirror. This was one of the Universal Dimensional Academy's treasures and a godly item left behind by the Prophet. It could be said that it was only inferior to the World Prison Pagoda in Yi Xian's hands. Qin Tian said softly, don't look down on him. Don't be careless. Su Yi nodded, I understand. After saying this, he turned and left. About 2 hours later, a group of experts from the Universal Dimensional Academy arrived at the place where the fourth dimension was sealed. However, they were not the top experts of the Universal Dimensional Academy. Because of this seal, the true experts of the Universal Dimensional Academy couldn't go down. The one leading them was Su Yi. Su Yi looked down and said softly, Lin Xiu, remember, don't look down on this person. This person's strength is above yours. If you meet him, use that treasure immediately. Don't be careless, understand? Lin Xiu said solemnly, Dean, are we inferior to this Yi Xian? Su Yi shook his head. It's not that we are inferior to him, but this person is very cunning. To prevent any accidents, if you meet him, use that treasure immediately. Don't give him a chance. Lin Xiu nodded. I understand. Su Yi said, also, don't look down on the people below. Lin Xiu bowed slightly. This student understands. This time I will definitely complete the mission in the fourth dimension. Su Yi nodded. The reason why I chose you this time is because you are mature and steady. Don't let the Academy Master down. Lin Xiu bowed again. I definitely won't let the Academy Master and Dean down. Su Yi nodded slightly. Go. Lin Xiu led the group and left. In the field, Su Yi looked down with a trace of worry in his eyes. Yi Xian. He had also investigated Yi Xian. This guy's strength might not be particularly terrifying, but he really knew how to play dirty tricks. Just like this time, several forces and the worldwide academy had been harmed by Yi Xian, especially Demonic City, which had almost been completely wiped out. And the worldwide academy had also lost a leader of Wu Yuan. Moreover, they had now become enemies with Fu Wenzong. It was all done by this youth called Yi Xian. Thinking of this, Su Yi became even more worried. Could this Lin Xiu and the others really fight against this Yi Xian? Su Yi looked down and became even more worried. On the other side, Yi Xian, who originally wanted to go to Fu Wenzong, suddenly stopped because he heard the news that the Worldwide Academy had sent many powerhouses to the fourth dimension. Needless to say, this news was released by the Worldwide Academy. Yi Xian knew that the Worldwide Academy wanted to force him back. And he had no choice but to go back. Fortunately, some of the super powerhouses in the fifth dimension were still unable to enter the fourth dimension. Yi Xian did not think too much and turned to leave. Return to the fourth dimension. Dual Realm Sky. After Lin Xiu and the others came down from the fifth dimension, they were all curiously looking at the surrounding world. At this moment, a man beside Lin Xiu suddenly said, "Senior Lin Xiu, the space of this fourth dimension is not ordinary. Moreover, the spirit chi here is extremely impurities, not pure at all." Lin Xiu glanced around and nodded. "Indeed can't compare to the fifth dimension. However, don't look down on the people here." The man nodded. "Naturally not. If that Xian was easy to deal with, the Academy venerates and the others would not be so cautious." Lin Xiu nodded slightly. To force this Xian to appear, there is only one way, and that is to go to the Black-Yellow Great World's northern region. However, according to the information we obtained, this northern region besides Xian, there are still a few powerhouses such as that in Lanxiu, that Xiaoqi, and a woman called Emosia and Lian Wanli. These four people's strength is not weak at all. If you encounter them, you must not be careless. Of course, we will not be weaker than them. Just don't underestimate the enemy." The man nodded. "Naturally not." Lin Xiu glanced at the distant horizon and said softly, "Then let's go." With that said, he turned into a white light and disappeared at the end of the horizon. And behind him, everyone also hurriedly followed. A total of 9 people. Not long after, the 9 of them entered the Black-Yellow Great World's territory and headed straight for the northern region. In a short while, the 9 of them arrived at the northern region's Tianjiang city. In the sky above the city, Lin Xiu looked down. At this moment, several powerful auras suddenly rushed into the sky from below. Very quickly, Lanxiu and the others appeared in front of Lin Xiu and the others. Not only Lanxiu and the other 2, but Emperor Shi, Old Man Bamboo Forest, Pavilion Elder Chen, and the others were also there. Lin Xiu glanced at Lanxiu and the others. "Is Xian here?" Xiaoqi walked out. "You are looking for him?" Lin Xiu nodded. Xiaoqi said, "He is not here." Lin Xiu nodded slightly. "It's fine. After killing you, he will appear." Xiaoqi smiled slightly. "Are the people of the fifth dimension also arrogant?" Lin Xiu walked toward Xiaoqi. "It's not that we are arrogant, but that we have the strength. If you don't believe me, I will prove it to you now." As his voice fell, he suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, a wisp of spear light suddenly appeared in front of Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi's eyes narrowed slightly. She suddenly drew her sword and slashed. Bang! Along with an explosion, both of them retreated explosively at the same time. During the process of retreating, Xiaoqi suddenly spread open her right hand, and the sword in her hand transformed into a flying sword that slashed out at an extremely swift speed. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Lin Xiu. Meanwhile, Lin Xiu suddenly spread open his right hand, and a violet talisman appeared in his palm. In the next moment, he suddenly clenched his fist. Cage. As soon as his voice resounded, the space in front of him directly formed a spatial cage, and Xiaoqi's sword was directly trapped by this spatial cage. In the distance, Xiaoqi suddenly pressed her palms together and she took a step forward. Break. As soon as her voice resounded, a strand of light suddenly erupted from the tip of the sword within the spatial cage. In the next moment, the sword broke out of the cage and slashed straight at Lin Xiu. There was a trace of surprise in Lin Xiu's eyes. He hadn't expected that the sword of the little girl before him would actually be able to slash apart his violet talisman. Lin Xiu's expression was calm. When the sword arrived above his head, he suddenly spread open his hands, and a spear flew out from his hands like a bolt of lightning. Bang! An explosion resounded like a thunderclap above Lin Xiu's head. Xiaoqi's sword was blocked, and at this moment, Xiaoqi suddenly appeared in front of Lin Xiu. The corners of Lin Xiu's mouth curled up slightly, and a talisman floated out from the center of his forehead. An orange talisman. As soon as the talisman appeared, a ball of flames instantly swept out at an extremely swift speed. Xiaoqi frowned slightly, and then she slashed with her sword, causing an expanse of light to surge out. However, the light vanished as soon as it came into contact with the ball of flames, and Xiaoqi herself was instantly enveloped by the ball of flames. Everyone here was shocked when they witnessed this scene. Xiaoqi's eyes opened wide within the ball of flames, and a scene suddenly appeared in her mind. That expanse of the starry sky, that woman in a plain dress. P.S. I recently noticed that there are many people selling movies in the book review section. Why am I being targeted? Chapter 868. Just as Lanxiu and the others arrived in front of Xiaoqi, Xiaoqi suddenly roared furiously from within the ball of flames. No, I am me. As soon as he finished speaking, A wave of sword light erupted from the ball of flames. Boom! The ball of flames was directly blasted away by this expanse of sword light. In the next moment, a sword light instantly slashed towards Lin Xiu. Lin Xiu was alarmed. He raised his spear to block. Boom! Lin Xiu was directly sent flying. Everyone looked towards where Seven was. Seven held her sword and walked towards Lin Xiu. In her eyes, 2 streaks of sword light flashed like lightning. He broke through. And Lan Xiu and Lian Wanli heaved a sigh of relief. They hadn't expected that Shao Qi would actually break through at this moment. It had to be said that among the younger generation of the four-dimensional universe, Shao Qi and Yi Xian were indeed the most monstrous swordsmen. In the distance, Lin Xiu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He raised his head and looked at Shao Qi with an incomparably solemn gaze. Originally he thought that only Yi Xian was his opponent in the four-dimensional universe, but at this moment he realized that the strength of the little girl in front of him was actually so strong. It was strong enough to resist his orange talisman. How monstrous! Lin Xiu looked at Seven. He held the spear in his hand tightly, and at that moment, the orange talisman turned into a flame and entered his spear. Boom! That long spear directly turned into a flaming spear, and its entire body was covered in flames. The body of the spear seemed to be forged from magma, and it emitted an extremely powerful and frightening heat. In the distance, Seven stared at Lin Xiu. The sword in her right hand started to tremble violently. Lin Xiu slowly closed his eyes. When Shao Qi was 5 feet away from him, he suddenly opened his eyes. Ah! After a furious roar, the spear in his hand suddenly pierced through the air. Wherever the spear passed, the space was directly burned into nothingness. He pointed his gun at little Seven. In the distance, Seven suddenly stopped and said, "My heart is my sword / In front of everyone's eyes, a sword light suddenly slashed the long spear. Boom! The spear shook violently and countless flames burst out. The sword light and the fire light confronted each other, but it did not last long. Ka-cha! The sound of something breaking resounded abruptly, and then a ray of light passed through the flames and slashed straight at Lin Xiu. Lin Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw the sword light slashing over. Another orange talisman appeared between his brows, and then an orange shield suddenly appeared in front of him. The sword arrived. Boom! The giant orange shield trembled violently and Lin Xiu instantly retreated. Not far away, Seven's right hand suddenly opened up and then she lightly slashed at Lin Xiu. Slash! When his voice faded, countless flying swords suddenly slashed towards him from all around Lin Xiu. A dense swarm of flying swords. The corners of Lin Xiu's mouth curled into a sinister smile. He suddenly grabbed the defensive orange talisman in his hand. Defend! As soon as he finished speaking, an orange barrier of light enveloped him. Moreover, the space around him started to condense layer by layer towards him. Boom 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 boom. A series of explosions rang out, and gradually tiny cracks began to appear on the orange light barrier. The expressions of the students from Myriad Dimension Academy instantly sank when they witnessed this scene. Shao Qi's strength had far exceeded their expectations. He didn't rely on any talismans, yet he possessed such formidable strength alone. Even in the 5th dimension he was an absolute top genius. Countless strands of sword qi shot towards Lin Xiu, and they formed a dense and boundless expanse of sword qi. On the other hand, more and more cracks appeared on the orange light barrier around Lin Xiu. Lin Xiu's expression was extremely gloomy, because he knew that if this continued, then he would be exhausted to death by this swordsman. But now he had no other choice. So long as he withdrew his shield, then he would be pierced through by a myriad of swords. When he thought up to here, Lin Xiu's heart calmed down. The more hopeless the situation was, the calmer one had to be. Otherwise one would die even faster. Use that precious treasure? Lin Xiu shook his head. He couldn't use that precious treasure because it was left for Yi Xian. Right at this moment, Seven suddenly vanished from afar. When she appeared once more, she was already in front of him, and then she stabbed her sword against the orange light barrier. Bang! The orange light barrier shook violently, and then a gap was directly torn open. Seven slashed down once more. Bang! The entire orange light barrier exploded, and Lin Xiu, who was within the barrier, retreated explosively. Seven stomped her right foot lightly, and she transformed into a streak of sword light that shot out explosively. Hiss! A wisp of sword light tore through the battlefield. In the distance, Lin Xiu's expression changed drastically. He knew that he couldn't receive this sword strike at all. Without any other choice, Lin Xiu said, "Attack." As soon as his voice faded, the 8 people behind him suddenly attacked. Rumble. Shao Qi's sword light was shattered. 7 glanced at Lin Xiu and the others and didn't attack again. Lin Xiu looked at 7 and he wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth. "Who are you?" 7 didn't answer. She retreated to the side and said softly, "I want to absorb it." After she finished speaking, she sat cross-legged in the void and then her eyes slowly closed. Lian Wanli suddenly poked Xiu's shoulder lightly. 7. 7 looked at Lian Wanli and Lian Wanli blinked. "Are you still 7? 7 rolled her eyes and then continued to comprehend. Seeing this scene, Lian Wanli instantly started laughing. He was still the original 7. In the distance, Lin Xiu took a deep look at 7. In the information given to him by the Dean, Xian was the one he had to fear the most. However, he hadn't expected that the strength of this little girl in front of him would actually be so formidable. Moreover, this little girl didn't rely on the power of any talismans. She didn't use any divine abilities. This was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Lan Xiu looked at Lin Xiu. "Do you still want to fight?" Beside Lin Xiu, a man was about to attack, but Lin Xiu shook his head. These people should be the top figures of the younger generation in this 4-dimensional universe. "You're not a match for them." That man said in a low voice. "I have 2 violet talismans." Lin Xiu said softly, "They don't rely on talismans here." At this moment he realized something. Perhaps it was because they were poor, but the people of this world basically didn't have talismans. However, this wasn't a completely bad thing. People who didn't rely on talismans to grow up would have even more terrifying combat strength. This was the disadvantage of the people of the 4-dimensional universe, but it was also their advantage. Lin Xiu retracted his thoughts and looked around. Where's Xian? He still had to leave his greatest trump card for Xian. And Lan Xiu looked at Lin Xiu and was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded out in his mind. And Lan Xiu was slightly startled. After a moment she looked at Lin Xiu. "He's on his way back." After a moment of silence, Lin Xiu led everyone and left. Lian Wanli suddenly said, "Should we stay?" And Lan Xiu shook his head. Lian Wanli nodded and then she retreated to 7's side. And Lan Xiu glanced at Lin Xiu and the others in the distance and didn't say anything. In the distance, Lin Xiu and the others directly left the northern region. Lin Xiu sat cross-legged on the ground amidst the clouds. In front of his chest there was a violet talisman. This talisman was currently healing his injuries. At this moment, the expressions of this group of Myriad Dimension Academy students were incomparably solemn. Lin Xiu had been defeated. Moreover, he hadn't lost to Xian but a seemingly very small little girl. According to rumor, Xian was even more formidable than that little girl. Since that little girl was so strong, then how strong was Xian? At this moment, the hearts of everyone felt heavy. At this moment, Lin Xiu was extremely depressed in his heart. He'd originally intended to head to the northern region and use Xian's friends to force Xian to make an appearance. However, he'd never imagined that Xian's friends would actually be so strong. Not only had he been unable to force Xian to make an appearance, he'd been defeated instead and it affected their morale. What a huge loss. Lin Xiu shook his head and concentrated on healing his injuries. Around an hour later, Lin Xiu suddenly stood up. He glanced at the surroundings and said that Xian might have returned. "Everyone be careful." Everyone instantly became vigilant when they heard this. Right at this moment, the head of a man behind Lin Xiu flew into the air. Everyone in the surroundings was greatly shocked when they saw this scene. Lin Xiu suddenly stabbed his spear towards the right, and space exploded apart where the tip of his spear descended. However, there was nothing there. The surroundings were silent to the point a falling needle could be heard. Lin Xiu's expression was icy cold as he glanced coldly at the surroundings. "Xian, do you dare to come out?" Right at this moment, the head of another student flew into the air. His blood sprayed out like a fountain. However, there was still no sign of the person who attacked. Everyone was astounded to the extreme. Lin Xiu suddenly roared furiously. "Xian, come out if you have the ability." Hiss. Another head flew into the air behind him. Lin Xiu immediately turned around. "Return." As soon as he finished speaking, Everyone turned around and vanished at the ends of the starry sky. Return to the fifth dimension. Lin Xiu knew that if Yi Xian didn't come out and continued carrying out assassinations like this, then he would be utterly helpless against Yi Xian. Now he only had a single path, and it was to return to the fifth dimension. As for the mission, he didn't think too much about it because staying alive was more important. In next to no time, everyone arrived at the dual world sky. However, when they arrived at the dual world sky, only 4 people remained. Moreover, during this entire process, they didn't see Yi Xian's people at all. In next to no time, when they arrived before the seal, another 2 bloody heads flew into the air. Only 2 people remained. At this moment, Lin Xiu suddenly stopped, because he sensed an aura locking onto him. Lin Xiu looked at the 2 people beside him. You two leave. However, the 2 of them shook their heads. Lin Xiu shouted angrily, leave quickly. The 2 of them hesitated for a moment and were just about to leave when a sword directly slashed through the throat of one of them. That man's head flew into the air. The other person was greatly alarmed and immediately turned around to flee. However, when he arrived before the seal, a sword directly pierced through his chest. Seeing this, Lin Xiu slowly closed his eyes. Meanwhile, a man appeared in front of Lin Xiu. The man wore a cloud-colored robe and held a sword in his hand. The arrival was precisely Yi Xian. Lin Xiu looked at Yi Xian and mocked, "Are you a swordsman or an assassin?" Yi Xian chuckled lightly and was just about to speak when Lin Xiu suddenly shouted angrily, "Universal Dimensional Mirror." When his voice fell, a mirror suddenly flew out from his chest. Yi Xian's expression was calm as if he had something to rely on. Chapter 869. Yi Xian didn't choose to kill Lin Xiu directly. This was Lian Qian's intention. As for why, he didn't know. He only knew that Lian Qian wouldn't harm him. And at this moment, when he saw this so-called universal dimensional mirror, Yi Xian's expression turned solemn. Danger. This was what he felt. Right at this moment, Lian Qian's voice suddenly sounded out in Yi Xian's mind. It really is this universal dimensional mirror. Yi Xian asked, Miss Lian Qian recognizes this mirror? Lian Qian said, I recognize it and I'm very familiar with it. That's because I was the one who completed the sealing power in this mirror. Yi Xian said in a low voice, this mirror is dangerous. Lian Qian said, of course it's dangerous. This thing is only inferior to your Xiao Ta in the Worldwide Academy. Yi Xian looked at the universal dimensional mirror in front of him. What should I do now? Lian Qian said, don't resist. Yi Xian nodded slightly, all right. Opposite Yi Xian, Lin Xiu suddenly said fiercely, Yi Xian, you'll pay a painful price for your arrogance. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly activated the universal dimensional mirror. In an instant, a white light enveloped Yi Xian, but Yi Xian didn't dodge. Soon the space around Yi Xian started stacking layer by layer. This space slowly formed an extremely strange shape and he was in this space. No, at this moment he felt like he was in countless spaces. Simply put, at this moment he felt like he was being divided into countless pieces by space. It was somewhat absurd, but it was also so real. Yi Xian was shocked in his heart. Miss Lian Qian? At this moment, Lian Qian suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side. Lian Qian glanced at the surroundings, opened her palm and said softly, withdraw. As soon as she finished speaking, the space around her started trembling. At this moment, a ball of white light suddenly appeared in front of her. Ah Qian. Lian Qian nodded slightly and said softly, little Wei, long time no see. The ball of white light said excitedly, it really is you. Lian Qian smiled and said, it's me. Let my friend go first. The white light said, all right. As soon as it finished speaking, the space around Yi Xian immediately returned to normal. After returning to normal, Yi Xian took a deep look at the ball of white light. His eyes were filled with fear. At that moment he really felt the aura of death. The ball of white light suddenly flew in front of Lian Qian. It seemed very intimate. Where's Big Sister? Is Big Sister with you? Lian Qian shook her head. Eldest sister isn't here, but she will be here when the time comes. White light said excitedly, good. At that time we can reunite again. Lian Qian said softly, little Wei, why did you submit to that Chen Tian? Did he force you? Little Wei said, no, he said he would help me find you, so I followed him. Lian Qian said solemnly, why don't you follow us now? Little Wei did not hesitate, all right. I'll follow you in the future. Hearing that, by the side, the corners of Yixian's mouth raised slightly. This was a tremendous benefit. Xianxia opened her palm. That streak of white light directly entered her palm and she disappeared instead. Right now Xiaoling, Xianxia and the rest were all inside the space that Xianxia created. Because the world prison pagoda was no longer on him. Fortunately, this did not have any effect. The space in the field returned to normal. Yixian appeared in front of Lin Xiu. When she saw Yixian, Lin Xiu's complexion instantly turned pale. How is this possible? Yixian looked at Lin Xiu and did not speak. He directly vanished on the spot. Far away, that Lin Xiu's expression changed drastically, and he suddenly blocked with his spear horizontally. Swish! A slicing sound suddenly sounded out. That long spear in Lin Xiu's hand directly split into two. Immediately following that, a wisp of sword light directly pressed against the space between Lin Xiu's brows. Lin Xiu's body stiffened. And at this moment, an angry shout suddenly sounded from above the seal. Yixian. Yixian raised his head and looked at the Myriad Dimension Academy's dean behind the seal. The next moment he held his sword and slashed. Swish. Lin Xiu's head directly flew off. Yixian held his sword and lightly patted it. Bang. That head directly flew in front of the dean behind the seal. Yixian looked at the dean with an ice-cold expression. I will graciously accept this great gift from the Myriad Dimension Academy. Help me tell Chen Tian that I, Yixian, thank him. After saying that, he turned and left. After the seal, the dean's expression was extremely ugly. Yixian returned to the Black-Yellow Great World's northern territory. As soon as he returned, Emperor Shi and Elder Bamboo Forest found him. Yixian said, Seniors, do you want to ask about the five-dimensional universe? Emperor Shi nodded. Yes, little friend. You have already been to the five-dimensional universe. How is it over there? Yixian thought for a moment and then said, the martial arts civilization over there is indeed more advanced than ours. Not only that, there is also the talisman path, the alchemy path, the forging path. I have already seen how formidable the talisman path is. In the future, if you two seniors encounter people who hold purple talismans, you must be careful. If they hold orange talismans, then you must be even more careful. Emperor Shi hesitated for a moment and then said, Can we go now? Yixian shook his head. It's best not to. Because behind the seal, there are experts from the Myriad Dimension Academy standing guard. The reason I can go there is because I have a special concealment technique. Emperor Shi's expression dimmed when he heard this. At this moment Yixian said, Seniors, don't be discouraged. When the time comes, everyone can go up. The two of them looked at Yixian. Yixian said softly, I am now thinking of a way to solve the crisis in our four-dimensional universe. Once the crisis is resolved, the people here can go to the five-dimensional universe at any time. Emperor Shi nodded slightly. Yes, the most important thing now is to protect the four-dimensional universe. Yixian said, Seniors, after I settle the matters here, I will go to the five-dimensional universe again. When the time is right, I will inform everyone. When the time comes, everyone can go to the five-dimensional universe. Emperor Shi hurriedly cupped his fists. On behalf of the experts of the two realm heavens, I will thank little friend Yixian first. Yixian shook his head. Strictly speaking, I might have implicated you. Emperor Shi shook his head and smiled. You can't say that. If it wasn't for little friend, the five-dimensional restriction would never have been lifted. Moreover, even if it was lifted without little friend blocking in front of us, all of us would probably die at the hands of the people of the five-dimensional universe. In short, the people of the four-dimensional universe must be united. Only by being united can we all survive. Yixian nodded. United. Seniors, during the time I am not in the four-dimensional universe, I will have to trouble you to look after the Black-Yellow Great World. Emperor Shi smiled. No problem. After a while, Emperor Shi and Emperor Shi left. At this time Shaoqi and Lanxiu and Lian Wanli walked in. Yixian opened his palm. In his hand, there were 2 purple talismans and 1 orange talisman. You guys choose. The 3 women glanced at the 3 talismans, but there was no one they chose. Yixian was about to speak when Shaoqi suddenly said, Although this kind of thing is powerful, it doesn't belong to you. It's better to use it less. And Lanxiu nodded in agreement. Yixian looked at Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli grabbed the 3 talismans and glanced at Xiaoqi and Enlanxiu. This is good stuff. Even if you don't use it, you can definitely sell it for a good price in the future. The 3 of them were speechless. At this time Xiaoqi suddenly said, how about the 5-dimensional universe? Yixian smiled. It's just Esosa. Why do you want to go? Xiaoqi shook her head. We will go after you deal with the Worldwide Academy. Otherwise, if they send people over, no one here can fight them. Yixian nodded. Indeed, if Xiaoqi and the others weren't here, he wouldn't be at ease. As for dealing with the Worldwide Academy, Yixian shook his head. He didn't have the ability to deal with the Worldwide Academy now. He could only fight the Worldwide Academy with his wits. He couldn't use brute force. Moreover, this seal would only last for a month at most. After a month, there would be nothing that could stop the 5-dimensional universe. At that time, the situation in the 4-dimensional universe would become even more difficult. Return to the 5-dimensional universe. Yixian looked at the 3 women in front of him. I still have to return to the 5-dimensional universe. Xiaoqi nodded. Be careful. If the situation isn't good, come back. Understand? Yixian smiled. Don't worry. If I can't beat them, I will run. Xiaoqi nodded. Be careful. Yixian said. You guys too. Wait for my news. When the time comes, come to the 5-dimensional universe too. Enlanxiu nodded. I will wait for your news. Yixian didn't say anything else and left the room. In the room, Xiaoqi said softly, once the seal disappears, there will be no more obstacles between the 5-dimensional universe and the 4-dimensional universe. Lian Wanli said, you are worried about the 4-dimensional universe? Xiaoqi nodded. I am very worried, because our side is weaker than the other side. Lian Wanli said softly, indeed. Forget it, I won't think so much. I will go wherever I go. I don't want to worry about such things. Xiaoqi shook her head. You are the most carefree person in this world. Lian Wanli laughed heartily. Living in this world, one should live a carefree life. Xiaoqi looked outside the room and said softly, indeed. However, things usually don't go as you wish. After Yixian left the northern region, he returned to the 5-dimensional universe. Now that the prison pagoda had fallen into Fu Wenzong's hands, he had to go to Fu Wenzong. This was because he knew that the Worldwide Academy wouldn't be able to sit still. One had to know that once Fu Wenzong grasped the treasure, the Worldwide Academy would have no chance. Of course, there was another possibility, which was that the Worldwide Academy would target him at all costs. So, he had to rush to Fu Wenzong and think of a way to make the Worldwide Academy and Fu Wenzong fight. Myriad Dimensional Academy within the Learning Hall. The dean stood in front of Qin Tian. Qin Tian was reading an ancient book. After a long while, the dean suddenly said, should I head down? Qin Tian was silent. The Academy Venerable said again, I can lower my cultivation level and go down. Qin Tian looked at the dean. At this moment he thought of something. The woman in the plain dress had said that she would protect the 4-dimensional universe. After a while Qin Tian smiled. I want to see how she will protect me. As he said this, he looked at the dean. Go down. The dean nodded and turned to leave. About 2 hours later, the dean suppressed his realm and came to the 4-dimensional universe. Dual Realm Sky. After coming to the 4-dimensional universe, the dean hesitated for a while before immediately restoring his realm. In an instant, a powerful force shook from his body. In an instant, the starry sky shook violently. At this moment, in the distant starry sky, a woman in a plain dress suddenly stopped. She turned her head and said softly, Am I too kind? P.S. I'm working hard on the update problem everyone is talking about. You guys know that I'm not young anymore. I can't write every day. I have to find a wife. Tell me, how many people who read my book have gone from being single to married and having children? And one more question. Do any readers have a young and beautiful sister that you can introduce to Lao Wan? You guys know that I'm an honest person. You can rest assured. Chapter 870. In the starry sky, the plain-dressed woman turned her head. Her gaze was like a sword that pierced through the galaxy. In the 2-realm sky, the dean, who had just recovered his realm, seemed to sense something. His expression changed greatly and he turned his head. The next moment he clenched his fists. Star River Control. Then he shouted. In the surrounding starry sky, countless starlight suddenly gathered towards him. Soon the dean was wrapped up by the starlight. The power of 10,000 stars. At this moment the Dean gathered the power of the starlight in this starry sky. At this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly broke through the air from the distant starry sky. In front of the countless starlight, the ray of sword light seemed so thin and small. However, the ray of sword light easily tore through the starlight. In an instant, countless starlight dimmed. The ray of sword light directly pierced through the Dean's forehead. The Dean's body stiffened. His eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. He had been killed in an instant. If it wasn't for the fact that his vitality was rapidly flowing away, he would have thought that he was dreaming. Killed in an instant. This was absurd. He had cultivated for so many years, but in front of this sword he couldn't resist at all. It was sad and ridiculous. The Dean raised his head and looked at the seal. This person, before he could finish his words, he had completely disappeared. He was directly erased. There was no Dean in the world. There was no reincarnation. After the seal, Qin Tian, who was reading in the Myriad Dimensions Academy, suddenly stopped. After a moment of silence he said softly, "I underestimated you." In the starry sky, the plain-dressed woman withdrew her gaze and looked towards the fifth dimension. A ray of sword light circled her fingertip and she was about to attack. At this moment she seemed to have thought of something and stopped. She was thinking about a problem. Xian had already gone to the fifth dimension. If she attacked, would she kill him as well? Would he be able to block this sword of his? Thinking of this, she didn't attack in the end. After a moment, the plain-dressed woman continued forward. Beside her there were invisible lines. These lines crisscrossed and intersected with each other, and she was where they intersected. Karma lines. The further she went, the more these threads appeared. It could be said that she was currently being entangled by countless karma. At that moment she suddenly stopped. She opened her palm and a thread appeared in her palm. Through that thread she saw a scene. That crack, that little boy, that little girl. And in front of him, there were many more such lines and more of them. A moment later, the woman gently put away the thread and softly said, "This is where I started, but it is not where you started." As she spoke, she looked into the distance. "In this life I will protect you." In the starry sky, the woman in the plain dress walked forward slowly. More and more karma threads appeared on her body. Dressed in plain clothes, elegant like an immortal, not for immortality, not for immortality, not knowing the road ahead, not asking about the way back, proud of the world. 10,000 Dimensions Academy was not able to hide the fact that the Dean was instantly killed. This matter quickly spread throughout the fifth dimension. After this incident, the four-dimensional universe became more mysterious. There was someone in the four-dimensional universe who could instantly kill an Academy Venerable. What kind of expert was the Academy Master? That was a life-and-death realm powerhouse. This kind of expert, even in the fifth dimension, could be considered to be at the peak level. However, he was killed by someone from the fourth dimension. This time, many forces began to redefine the strength of the fourth dimension. This world was not as weak as they thought it was. Of course, there were even more people who rejoiced in other people's misfortune because the Worldwide Academy had lost another super expert. In the past, the Worldwide Academy's reputation in the fifth dimension was extremely high. Green City Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Xian's position as prince will be removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The person who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth. The youth had a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two small hands were tightly holding the hem of her skirt. Her face had a trace of sickly paleness. She looked a little weak and there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's biological sister. This time, when she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over regardless of her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder coldly looked at Yi Ling. "This is a family matter, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me." At this time the new Prince Yilang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder coldly replied, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new Prince Yilang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yilang inherits the title of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yiling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yilang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yilang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince. I will do anything for you." Yilang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yilang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Zhou Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Zhou Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Zhou Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Zhou Xian, his face changed. He looked at Yilang and was about to speak. At this moment, Zhou Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Zhou Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt dizzy and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, "Zhou Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Zhou Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. "Pooh!" Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly. Zhou Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Zhou Xian ignored Zhang Mu. Walking up to Yiling, seeing Yiling's state, Zhou Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Zhou Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Zhou Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Zhou Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Zhou Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yilang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yilang. On both sides there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yiling and she was Zhou Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Zhou Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yiling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, speaking timidly. Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years and even now he's fighting for the clan. This is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince I'll need 10 guards. From now on you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe and the robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Ping. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Ping!